talk to you about 2020 and what you saw, what concerned you in your role. But first, was there anything that was concerning to you about American democracy before 2020, before we get to the campaign, before we get to the election?
Yes, although I didn't frame it in that way at all. I had been.
Folks, welcome to the Great American Mail live stream of the January 6th Select Committee, the show trial, the unconstitutional committee's fourth day of hearings as to the January 6th incident. We are looking there back at Judge Ludwig. As you know, if you watched us and watched our live stream, we've live streamed all 3 days. This will be the fourth. That was Judge Ludwig testifying before NPR, basically explaining that he became alarmed in 2016. So that witness that testified in day 3 is basically an anti-Trumper. He didn't like Trump since 2016. He's no longer Republican. So today, what are we going to see? Well, today, when we get to the hearings, that's them. That's also them. No, this last we're keeping an eye on it. That's CBS. Nobody has it yet, so we're just gonna get you warmed up as to what's going on. So, by the way, if you're watching us, you please share this, let other people know, subscribe, tell a friend to subscribe. We've got a lot of videos up. You're looking now at our Great American Mail YouTube channel. If you want to understand the basics of January 6th, there's a lot of really good stuff here. I would urge you to start with the first couple things that we did here on January 6th and what it was to me, what it means to be January 6th. So what I would say was, one, you've got one here live, what we did, where basically what you need to know about January 6th hearings, part 1. There's another one right here. No, Trump didn't commit a crime. January 6 hearings, part 2. There's a part 3, part 4. I won't belabor it, but you could check it out. I would also urge you to go over to our Substack channel, which is GreatAmericanMail.substack.com. We've got several articles up there about January 6th, all going back, explaining what January 6th is about. So let's shift over real quickly to the note I am keeping on this. This is, it should bring that up, and it did. Let me slide it over here. This is the outline. I'll be outlining it today. Just scroll back to the bottom. This is hearing day 4. I've got it ready to go. Those are my notes, as you can see, on hearing day 3. I went all the way through them, right? And we've got, I may publish this on my Great American Mail Substack. You've got transcripts, you've got the YouTubes that you can go to. I need to add some things. So what is January 6th about for these people? What are they trying to do? What is the committee basically decided? Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. Yeah, okay, that's much better. All right, so what is it about for these people? Well, the first 3 days of hearing has basically demonstrated that for them it is several things, okay? Let's see if I can move that over a little bit. Let me shrink it down just a hair. There we go. All right, so what's it about? Well, it's about all of these things. One, they're trying to show that Trump caused the violence. Now, that's probably the most effective thing they've done. And folks, you got to understand, this is a committee that has no opposition, that has no Republican on it, that was appointed by a Republican. The only Republicans were appointed by Pelosi. And if, again, a moment ago when I brought up the YouTube page, if you go, there's one up there about the January 6th committee being unconstitutional and Navarro should be freed. Check that out if you want. We break it down through the law. We break down at the Great American Mail, I'm a Georgia, Florida lawyer. We break down the events of the day through the Constitution, history, and the law. So we won't just tell you stuff. We'll actually bring it up and show you the actual law. We break down the judge's decision saying that Navarro's subpoena was legal when it's not. But anyway, so they're trying to say that Trump caused the violence. Now, they're actually doing a pretty good job of this, folks. I hate to admit it, because it's a show trial. They're doing everything in secrecy, but they shouldn't be able to accomplish anything. America should revolt against this, but we're not. So they are doing that. Number 2, they're trying to show, and this is what day 3 was all about, and day 4 will be about this today. Right? We've got several witnesses coming up. Who do we have? Well, we're going to have Brad. Again, let me tell you what it is. So they're trying to challenge Biden. They're saying that challenging Biden's certification is a coup or an insurrection. Now, again, our latest video we just came out with, I believe, on Sunday, debunks this. In fact, let me just pull it up because it's a 20-minute video and it's going pretty well. If you go to we need to go back to this channel and we go to your channel videos, it'll pop right up. Boom. Here it is right here. It's like, okay, they did this
Raskin
one.
has to say.
It's not a coup to challenge Biden's certification. January 6 hearings, part 4. If you go to that, we'll break you down exactly what they are trying to prove here and why they're just wrong. So getting back to Microsoft Word. All right. So we get back to Word here. So they're trying to show that it's a coup and insurrection. Today will be the second hearing devoted to that. And we're going to hear from Brad Raffensperger, who is the Secretary of Georgia. We're going to hear from his deputy. We're going to hear from the Arizona Speaker. And we're going to hear from Shay Moss, who was a Fulton County worker who later claimed defamation and filed a bunch of lawsuits. But those are the 4 witnesses we're going to hear from live. And as per usual, they're going to bring in a lot of other evidence. One of the most disturbing things about this committee is that they are conducting it in secrecy. That's not the way the Watergate hearings worked. That's not the way the impeachment of Bill Clinton worked when the Republicans had the House. It's not the way Americans operate. But for some reason, it's the way the January 6th committee operates. So they've got it in secrecy. Now, they come forward with these hearings, and do they say, okay, here's all the evidence that we gathered in secrecy? No. They say, we'll get some. We've got millions of pieces of evidence. Let me reach back, get one little thing. Here, you can see this one little thing, right? That's what they do. They are not showing us all the evidence. That's why, well, among many reasons why it's a show trial. So anyway, we shall see what they are able to show today. Hearing day 3 was not particularly effective, although I will say, and again, we live stream it if you want. You look back, you can see we've got a full live stream, watch the whole 3 hours of it or more. And the only thing that they did effectively do there, again, and the only reason they were able to do it effectively is because it's a show trial and there's no opposition, is they did get Pence's legal team, a man named Greg Jacob, to basically say, yeah, Eastman knew what he was doing was unconstitutional, and he told me. I hate it, but it's powerful. What are the other things that they're going to try to prove? And then we're going to basically, I'm going to back you up on what happened the various days, and then they should be ready to go live. So what's the third thing they're trying to do? The third thing they're trying to do, and so far they really haven't done it. They've kind of hinted at it, but they haven't done it. They're trying to show that Trump incited the violence. That's important because incitement is an exception to the First Amendment. You do not have a First Amendment right to incite violence. The lead case there, you see it right there, is Brandenburg versus Ohio. We're going to do a live stream on Brown versus Ohio probably this week. It will be entitled January 6 Hearings Part 5 because that's another, just another in a series of things. We're breaking this down for you as we go. They're also trying to show that Trump was derelict in duty. Well, it's kind of awkwardly phrased, isn't it? In his duty. Let's see. Okay, in his duty on January 6th. That's where he didn't call off the National Guard fast enough, et cetera, et cetera. That's nonsense. It's mind reading. And I mean, Liz Cheney just stepped in it when she tried to prove that. She said, Trump didn't call the National Guard. Trump didn't call the Capitol Police. Trump didn't do anything. Mike Pence did. Well, maybe he didn't do it because he told Pence to do it. And since you don't have any testimony, you don't know one way or the other. All right. They're also going to show that Trump is ineligible for future office. That's Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. We will likely get that through that today or talk about it. But again, today is going to be focused on, it's a coup to challenge Biden's certification. Okay. They threw in this one, which I don't really sort of understand, but they say that Trump has some connection to Oath Keepers and Proud Boys who had an independent insurrection plan. And I'm not really sure where they're going with that. Again, this committee has a bad habit of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, if you give me I wouldn't do it because I'm an American, but if you gave me the ability to conduct an investigation in secrecy, right, gather millions of pieces of evidence, and then have a show hearing where I get to pick and choose what I show you, you would never come forward with something so weak. It's just, you would just go, yeah, we had a million pieces of evidence. We've sifted through it. We've had experts. We've had help. We all sat around, and we just can't make it work. Let's just not do that because we control the hearing, right? It's just so simple. Anyway, the last thing they did, and they did this in the second hearing, or maybe in the third, but Trump grifted Americans by raising campaign cash for a legal defense fund, which didn't exist and never spent the cash on lawsuits. Should say lawsuits. I'm correcting this in real time. Maybe I won't put this up on my Substack page. It looks like it's got some. It is kind of good, though, because we go through all the hearings and we tell you exactly what these various sources are supposed to tell you so that later when we're acting as the jury, we'll be able to figure out what's going on. Anyway, I'll be filling this in while we're watching the hearings together, and I'll be providing commentary as well. So let's get back to Safari here, see if the hearings are up. Are they ready yet? Are they going? What are they doing? Looks like they might be filing in today. I don't know if that's no, that looks like it's in. Let's see if CBS. Let's see what's going on there.
is this kind of pressure building, but it is kind of important to think when we're looking at what is the point of this hearing, of these hearings. Yes, they are absolutely to have on the record an accounting of what happened in the lead up to January 6th, what happened on January 6th, and what is continuing to happen after January 6th, but also to potentially have some kind of referral to the Justice Department for some kind of action. Now, we don't know what that will look like, and we still have more hearings to go, and of course, still documents to be reviewed by the Justice Department, but that is certainly one of the elements here.
Yeah, so the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, obviously watching this, much of America watching this. We also know that former President Trump has been watching. He reacted to the hearings and wrote on his platform, Truth Social, that he wants equal time to tell his side of the story.
The media, by the way,
Eric Swalwell,
it looks like they're getting
Mr.
ready to go
Trump's
here.
loss
That's
and
today,
basically
because
said,
that's, let me
"Sure,
stop
but
this.
you
Pull it up in open a new window. There we go. Boom. All right. That is live, folks, because that's Brad Raffensperger. Boy, look at him. This is his day in court. He is loving this. All right, we may end up doing, let's see if we can, I'd rather do C-SPAN, because last time we did CBS, we had trouble getting them to, stop when we want to stop, but let's see what happens here. Anyway, they're not ready to go. So the media is all over this. They love this. They think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Nobody else seems to care about it, and they are willfully ignorant about it. I mean, it is amazing to me that no one has brought up the fact that we're having a show trial. I mean, we are literally having a show trial. Nobody seems to care that this is going on. These two guys, Raffensperger and his, I don't think that's his assistant. That's the Arizona guy. That's his assistant there. These two clowns, they are going to sit there and say, hey, yeah, Trump said this, Trump said that. We looked at it. There was no fraud. We did a perfect job. I mean, again, this is what happens when you have one side asking questions and you don't have anything coming on from the other side. It really is despicable. But anyway, we'll see we'll be breaking it down. We'll keep them honest in live time. I promise you that. So they shouldn't be able to get away with this. The January 6th committee shouldn't be doing this, but they are. So anyway, getting back to the first few days of the hearing and what's going on out there is Raffensperger, again, he's conflicted. He's going to try to say Trump pressured him. They're going to take the phone call. The phone call is about, I think it's about an hour and 20 minutes in total. But they pick out a couple of phrases where he says, I only need this and I only need this. But they miss the fact that throughout the call, and you can listen to the call on the internet, right? In fact, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. I'm pretty sure I have it somewhere. All right, well, it's not showing. Anyway, if you look, you can find the call. There's several places. Well, let's just do it real nice. Let's do it right now. Let's see. Let's put Trump call Raffensperger. See what comes up. Video. There it is. Right here's the full phone call right there. Boom. The sad truth has it. This is another person that looks to have it. Let's pull this one up. See what happens.
Mr. President,
yeah.
Everybody is
there you go.
online,
There's the full call.
So, this is Mark Meadows, the Chief of Staff, just so we all are aware. On the line is Secretary of State.
That's Brad Raffensperger.
And two other individuals, Jordan and Mr. Germany.
The one of them is his deputy who's going to testify
With
today.
him, you also have the attorneys that represent the president, Kurt.
Anyway, we may tune into that later, depending on what Raffensperger has to say. But it's interesting. It's sort of sad to see Raffensperger so happy here and so having a great time and just living it up. I mean, he is likely to lose. I don't know what he's thinking. I mean, he managed to pull out a primary opponent in Georgia backed by Trump, mainly because in Georgia, which I don't think you should be able to do this, but they allow you to cross over. But because people crossed over, then in Georgia you were able to have people come over and vote for. I really would prefer to use C-SPAN. Let's see what they go. Maybe they're going to go live here. Said they were live at 11:45. Why aren't they live? Why aren't you live? Where are you? Let's try to refresh. See if that works. Watch live. How about now?
You won't believe what you can
We
create.
got to watch
with
an
your
ad.
Glow
Okay, we're
Forge.
not going to listen to an ad. Sorry. Anyway, so we'll see if this comes up. I'd much rather use C-SPAN than CBS because last time we had trouble with CBS. But anyway, so Raffensperger is likely to lose in November. I don't know what he's thinking because Republicans are not going to turn out for this guy, and they're especially not going to turn out for this guy. Skip the ad. All right, there we go. That's much better. Well, we'll see here. We may use CBS. We may use. It depends. We got CBS, and we got them. We'll see which one we use. But I don't think he's going to win in Georgia in November because Georgia's going to be tight. I mean, Stacey Abrams, and they can talk all they want about the racism of what's going on in the world. But the fact of the matter is blacks are registered at a higher rate in Georgia than our whites. They turn out. That's why Stacey Abrams was able to keep the Georgia gubernatorial race tight in 2018. It's why Warnock and Ossoff were able to keep it very close and then get over the hump in the runoff. They both had lost before, and then in the runoff they won. Well, it's a very tight state, so you need all the Republicans behind you. Raffensperger's not doing himself any favors. We'll see. I mean, maybe he was subpoenaed. I don't know. He might have been subpoenaed. If he was subpoenaed, then obviously he's got no choice. But I don't know what is CBS doing here. Well, I don't know. Anyway, we'll see. I'm going to stick with C-SPAN. We had good experiences with them. We might shift back because it's a little bit bigger. If I show you CBS, we'll see. But for the time being, let's see what they're going to have to say. Again, today is going to be focused on the pressure campaign of Donald Trump to get states to do various things. Let's put up the volume, see what's going on here, and we'll be able to break this down in live time. Let me get my Microsoft Word back up. Drop that over there. Scroll down. All right, here we go, folks.
The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol will be in order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare the committee in recess at any point. Pursuant to House Deposition Authority Regulation 10, the chair announces the committee's approval to release the deposition material presented during today's hearing. Good afternoon.
Only what's presented, not all of it.
In our
Only.
last hearing, we told the story of a scheme driven by Donald Trump to pressure former Vice President Mike Pence to illegally overturn the election results. We showed that when the pressure campaign failed and Mike Pence fulfilled his constitutional obligation, Donald Trump turned a violent mob loose on him. We showed that the mob came within roughly 40 feet of the Vice President. Today, we'll show that what happened to Mike Pence wasn't an isolated part of Donald Trump's scheme to overturn the election. In fact, pressuring public servants into betraying their oaths was a fundamental part of the playbook. And a handful of election officials in several key states stood between Donald Trump and the upending of American democracy. As we begin today, it's important to remember
He can't help himself from lying. You really can't.
When we count the votes for president, we count the votes state by state. For the most part, the candidates who win the popular vote in a state wins all the state's electoral college votes. And whoever wins a majority of the electoral college votes wins the presidency. So when Donald Trump tried to overturn the election results, he focused on just a few states. He wanted officials at the local and state level to say the vote was tainted by widespread fraud and throw out the results, even though, as we showed last week, there wasn't any voter fraud that could have overturned the election results.
You didn't show that.
And like Mike Pence,
Not even close.
these public servants wouldn't go along with Donald Trump's scheme. And when they
Also
wouldn't
not
embrace
true.
the big lie and substitute the will of the voters with Donald Trump's will to remain in power, Donald Trump worked to ensure they faced the consequences. Threats to people's livelihood and lives. Threats of violence that Donald Trump knew about and amplified. And in our other hearings, we can't just look backward at what happened in late 2020 and in the early 2021 because the danger hadn't gone away. Our democracy endured a mighty test on January 6th and in the days before. We say our institutions held. But what does that really mean? Democratic institutions aren't abstractions or ideas. They are local officials who oversee elections, secretaries of state, people in whom we placed our trust that they'll carry out their duties. But what if they don't? 2 weeks ago, New Mexico held its primary elections. One county commission refused to certify the results, citing vague, unsupported claims dealing with Dominion voting machines. The court stepped in, saying New Mexico law required the commission to certify the results. 2 of the 3 members of the commission finally relented. One still refused, saying his vote, quote, isn't based on any evidence, it's not based on any facts, it's only based on my gut feeling and my own intuition, and that's all I need. By the way, a few months ago, this county commissioner was found guilty of illegally entering the Capitol grounds on January 6th. This story reminds us of a few things. First, as we've shown in our previous hearings, claims that widespread voter fraud tainted the 2020 presidential election have always been a lie. Donald Trump knew they were a lie, and he kept amplifying them anyway.
Now, so again, this is another thing that they've been doing throughout the committee, and it really isn't effective. It's basically Benny Thompson opening statement, all kinds of show us the evidence, Benny. Number 2, this thing of saying we know it's a lie, it just goes and smacks in the face of America, right? No one has ever looked at every ballot. And I'm talking about something very simple. Go get all the ballots, get them in a room, get them in a warehouse, case may be. Let's look at every single one, make sure every single one was proper. That hasn't been done. They're not going to do it. All that they say is we, the Democrat Party, have been declared the winner. We're not going to let you look. You're going to have to take it that it was safe and secure. And then that's it. We just got to declare it. That's as simple as they're getting here. And they're not fooling anybody. They're just not. By saying it, they're not fooling it. And they're not being effective because they're not giving us the evidence, right? Let's see the evidence.
Described today, the relentless, destructive pressure campaign on state and local officials was all based on a lie. Donald Trump knew it. He did it anyway. Second, the lie hasn't gone away. It's corrupting our democratic institutions. People who believe that lie are now seeking positions of public trust. And as seen in New Mexico, their oath to be to the people they serve will take a back seat to their commitment to the big lie.
I see again, so now you're impugning the actions of people in real time, who are doing whatever they're doing. Again, without, folks, I hate to be lawyerly here, but objection, hearsay. You have no idea. This is all out of court testimony that you're bringing in. This is why you don't allow hearsay. Because let's go hear from those officials why they're doing it. This committee just more damage than they can do.
Institutions don't break under the pressure. We won't have close calls. We'll have a catastrophe. My distinguished colleague from California, Mr. Schiff, will present much of the Select Committee's findings on this matter.
Oh, my goodness.
First,
wow.
I'm pleased to recognize our Vice Chair, Ms. Cheney
of
Wyoming, for any opening statement she'd care to offer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Today, we will begin examining President Trump's effort to overturn the election by exerting pressure on state officials and state legislatures. Donald Trump had a direct and personal role in this effort, as did Rudy Giuliani, as did John Eastman. In other words, the same people who were attempting to pressure Vice President Mike Pence to reject electoral votes illegally were also simultaneously working to reverse the outcome of the 2020 election at the state level. Each of these efforts to overturn the election is independently serious. Each deserves attention both by Congress and by our Department of Justice.
Ooh,
But
wow.
as the federal court has already
Wow.
indicated,
Oh, my
these
God.
efforts were also part of a broader plan.
That is an attack by the legislative branch on the executive branch. Both of the same party, by the way. Okay, you know why the DOJ hasn't done anything? Because there's no crime. If you go to our YouTube channel, which some of you are on right now, you can see it. This is crazy. That's the first time I've heard her do that, though, but we'll see. Wow,
And
it's just
all of
incredible.
this was done in preparation for January 6th. I would note 2 points for particular focus today. First, today you will hear about calls made by President Trump to officials of Georgia and other states. As you listen to these tapes, keep in mind what Donald Trump already knew at the time he was making those calls. He had been told over and over again that his stolen election allegations were nonsense. For example, this is what former Attorney General Bill Barr said to President Trump about allegations in Georgia.
This will be the Barr testimony where he said it was nonsense.
Took a hard look
Or
at this
BS.
ourselves, and based on
No, they
our
didn't.
review of it, including the interviews of the key witnesses, the Fulton County allegations had no merit. The ballots under the table were legitimate ballots. They weren't in a suitcase. They had been pre-opened for eventually feeding into the machine. All the stuff about the water leak and that there was some subterfuge involved. We felt there was some confusion, but there was no evidence of a subterfuge to create an opportunity to feed things into the count. And so we didn't see any evidence of fraud in the Fulton County episode.
And Acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue told Donald Trump.
Now, just real quickly, he claimed he looked into it, but the official that was supposed to look into it was later fired. Also, he skips over the fact that they told the poll watchers, Democrat and Republican, to go home. And they went back in and counted. He just whitewashes all of that. So you understand, maybe the ballots were legit, maybe they weren't. But the reason people are suspicious is they somehow got brought out after the poll watchers were told to leave. And the poll watchers didn't come back till the next day.
Yes.
And I said something to the effect of, sir, we've done dozens of investigations, hundreds of interviews. The major allegations are not supported by the evidence developed.
Mr. Trump was told by his own advisors that he had no basis for his stolen election claims. Yet he continued to pressure state officials.
Just real quick, I mean, this is a common claim. He was told by some people. He was told by other people that they were legit. Just keep that clear.
Change the election results. Second, you will hear about a number of threats and efforts to pressure state officials to reverse the election outcome. One of our witnesses today, Gabriel Sterling, explicitly warned President Trump about potential violence on December 1st, 2020, more than a month before January 6th. You will see excerpts from that video repeatedly today.
Okay, so somebody warns me of something.
Gone too far. All of it. Joe DeGenova today asked for Chris Krebs, a patriot who ran CISA, to be shot. A 20-something tech in Gwinnett County today has death threats and a noose put out saying he should be hung for treason because he was transferring a report on batches from an EMS to a county computer so he could read it. It has to stop. Mr. President, you have not condemned these actions or this language. Senators, you have not condemned this language or these actions. This has to stop. We need you to step up, and if you're going to take a position of leadership, show some. My boss, Secretary Raffensperger, his address is out there. They have people doing caravans in front of their house. They've had people come onto their property. It has to.
Okay, real quick here, because they've now doctored and showed another one. Couple things here. He is saying, hey, me and my boss, we looked at ourselves and we didn't do anything wrong. So he's conflicted. He's also conflicted because he's angry. He doesn't like the allegations of Trump. And what they don't understand, the committee thinks that we're all a bunch of children and we can't figure things out. That, to me, I understand why they're showing it to me. Yeah, and he should not be getting death threats, and people should not be doing that. That's absolutely improper. But it clearly shows a state of mind. He's ticked off. You think he's still ticked off? I bet he is. So now he's coming forward to the January 6th committee. This guy is not an innocent bystander there. He's a conflicted witness. And this is why you shouldn't have show trials and why we don't usually do it in America.
Stop. This is elections. This is the backbone of democracy. And all of you who have not said a damn word are complicit in this.
Oh, now we're all complicit. Okay. Doesn't
Point
seem,
is this.
like a stable person
Donald
to me.
Trump did not care about the threats of violence. He did not condemn them. He made no effort to stop them. He went forward with his fake allegations anyway. One more point. I would urge all of those watching today to focus on the evidence the committee will present. Don't be distracted by politics. This is serious. We cannot let America become a nation of conspiracy theories and thug violence.
Oh, Cheney.
Finally,
Woo.
I want to thank our witnesses
Oh,
today
my God. You are,
for all of your service
I mean,
to
one
our
of the
country.
worst prosecutors
Today,
I've ever
all
seen
of
in my entire
America
life.
will hear about
Jeez.
the selfless actions of these men and women who acted honorably to uphold the law,
Oh, my God.
protect our freedom, and preserve our Constitution. Today, Mr. Chairman, we will all see an example of what truly makes America great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Wow. A
Without
show trial
objection,
is
the
what our
chair
Constitution
recognizes
provides
the
for these
gentleman
people.
from California, Mr. Schiff, for an opening statement.
Oh, okay. All right. See what he has to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Vice Chair. On November 3rd, 2020, Donald Trump ran for re-election to the office of the presidency, and he lost. His opponent, Joe Biden, finished ahead in the key battleground states of Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and elsewhere. Nevertheless, and for the first time in history, the losing presidential candidate fought to hold on to power. As we have seen in previous hearings, he did so through a variety of means. On Election Day, he sought to stop the counting of the vote, knowing that the millions of absentee ballots elections officials would be counting on Election Day and thereafter would run strongly against him and deliver a victory to Joe Biden. Next, and when he could not stop the counting, he tried to stop state legislatures and governors from certifying the results of the election. He went to court and filed dozens of frivolous lawsuits, making unsubstantiated claims of fraud. When that too failed, he mounted a pressure campaign directed at individual state legislators to try to get them to go back into session and either declare him the winner, decertify Joe Biden as the winner, or send two slates of electors to Congress, one for Biden and one for him, and pressure Vice President Pence to choose him as the winner. But the state legislatures wouldn't go along with this scheme, and neither would the vice president.
But they did
None
send
of the
people.
legislatures agreed to go back into special session and declare him the winner. No legitimate state authority in the states Donald Trump lost would agree to appoint fake Trump electors and send them to Congress. But this didn't stop the Trump campaign either.
Now this is going to be interesting because I haven't heard this line of attack yet. What he's going to say is that what happened is the legislature's taking action since they didn't do it by a special session. They, in fact, 6 states did send alternate electors, but I don't know if they did it through a special session that would have been signed by the governor or something like that. But that's technically not needed. In fact, if our last YouTube article on this that we put up on Sunday goes through that law and cites you to it. So it's a technicality he's bringing up here, but that's the first time I've heard it.
They assembled groups of individuals in key battleground states and got them to call themselves electors, created phony certificates associated with these fake electors, and then transmitted these certificates to Washington and to the Congress to be counted during the joint session of Congress on January 6th. None of this worked. But according to Federal District Judge David Carter, former President Trump and others likely violated multiple federal laws by engaging in this scheme, including conspiracy to defraud the United States. You will hear evidence of the former president and his top advisors' direct involvement in key elements of this plot, or what Judge Carter called a coup in search of a legal theory. For as the judge explained, President Trump's pressure campaign to stop the electoral count did not end with Vice President Pence. It targeted every tier of federal and state elected officials. Convincing state legislatures, he said, to certify competing electors was essential to stop the count and ensure President Trump's reelection. As we have seen in our prior hearings, running through this scheme was a big lie that the election was plagued with massive fraud and somehow stolen. You'll remember what the president's own attorney general, Bill Barr, said he told the president about these claims.
It'll be nonsense or BS.
Affecting the outcome of the election.
And I told him that the stuff that his people were shoveling out to the public was bullshit. I mean, that the claims of fraud were bullshit.
The president's lie was and is a dangerous cancer on the body politic. If you can convince Americans that they cannot trust their own elections, that any time they lose it is somehow illegitimate, then what is left but violence to determine who should govern?
Wow.
This brings us to the focus of today's hearing.
This is amazing. These are the people who challenged 2016. They challenged 2018 in Georgia, said Stacey Abrams won. I mean, a member of the committee here, Raskin, objected to the certification of Trump's victory. They tried to impeach them. I mean, these people are the over-the-topness of this. I don't think is effective. Honestly, I think once you've already got it rigged, you just got to soft pedal it. But we'll see if it works. It's not working for me.
When state elections officials refused to stop the count, Donald Trump and his campaign tried to put pressure on them. When state executive officials refused to certify him the winner of states he lost, he applied more pressure. When state legislators refused to go back into session and appoint Trump electors, he amped up the pressure yet again. Anyone who got in the way of Donald Trump's continued hold on power after he lost the election was the subject of a dangerous and escalating campaign of pressure. This pressure campaign brought angry phone calls and texts, armed protests, intimidation, and all too often threats of violence and death. State legislators were singled out. So too were statewide elections officials. Even local elections workers, diligently doing their jobs, were accused of being criminals and had their lives turned upside down. As we will show, the president's supporters heard the former president's claims of fraud and the false allegations he made against state and local officials as a call to action.
Stop the steal! Stop the steal! Stop the steal! You're a threat to democracy! You're a threat to free and honest election!
And then about 45 minutes later, we started to hear the noises outside my home, and my stomach sunk, and I thought, it's me. And then it's just, we don't know.
Obviously,
the uncertainty of that was what was the fear. Like, are they coming with guns? Are they going to attack my house? I'm in here with my kid. I'm trying to put him to bed. And so it was, that was the scariest moment, just not knowing what was going to happen.
This pressure campaign against state and local officials spanned numerous contested states, as you will see in this video produced by the Select Committee.
My name is Josh Roselman. I'm an investigative counsel for the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. Beginning in late November 2020, the president and his lawyers started appearing before state legislators, urging them to give their electoral votes to Trump, even though he lost the popular vote.
I represent President Trump along with Jenna Ellis, and this is our fourth or fifth hearing.
This election has to be turned around because we won Pennsylvania by a lot, and we won all of these swing states by a lot.
This was a strategy with both practical and legal elements. The Select Committee has obtained an email from just 2 days after the election in which a Trump campaign lawyer named Cleta Mitchell asked another Trump lawyer, John Eastman, to write a memo justifying the idea.
When do you remember this coming up as an option in the post-election period for the first time?
Right after the election. It might have been before the election.
Eastman prepared a memo attempting to justify this strategy, which was circulated to the Trump White House, Rudy Giuliani's legal team, and state legislators around the country. And he appeared before the Georgia state legislature to advocate for it publicly.
You could also do what the Florida legislature was prepared to do, which is to adopt a slate of electors yourself. And when you add in the mix of the significant statistical anomalies and sworn affidavits and video evidence of outright election fraud, I don't think it's just your authority to do that, but quite frankly, I think you have a duty to do that, to protect the integrity of the election here in Georgia.
But Republican officials in several states released public statements recognizing that President Trump's proposal was unlawful. For instance, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp called the proposal unconstitutional, while Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers wrote that the idea would undermine the rule of law. The pressure campaign to get state legislators to go along with the scheme intensified when President Trump invited delegations from Michigan and Pennsylvania to the White House.
Either you or Speaker Chatfield, did you make the point to the president that you were not going to do anything that violated Michigan law?
I believe we did. Whether or not it was those exact words or not, but I think that the words that I would have more likely used is we were going to follow the law.
Nevertheless, the pressure continued. The next day, President Trump tweeted, quote, "Hopefully the courts and/or legislatures will have the courage to do what has to be done to maintain the integrity of our elections and the United States of America itself. The world is watching." He posted multiple messages on Facebook listing the contact information for state officials and urging his supporters to contact them to, quote, "demand a vote on decertification." In one of those posts, President Trump disclosed Mike Shirkey's personal phone number to his millions of followers.
All I remember is receiving over just shy of 4,000 text messages over a short period of time. Calling to take action. It was a loud noise, loud, consistent cadence of, we hear that the Trump folks are calling and asking for changes in the electors, and you guys can do this. Well, they were believing things that were untrue.
These efforts also involved targeted outreach to state legislators.
Hi, Representative. My name is Angela McCallum. I'm calling from Trump campaign headquarters in Washington, D.C. You do have the power to reclaim your authority and send a slate of electors that will support President Trump and Vice President Pence.
From President Trump's lawyers and from Trump himself.
And I've become friendly with legislators that I didn't know 4 weeks ago.
Another legislator, Pennsylvania House Speaker Brian Cutler, received daily voicemails from Trump's lawyers in the last week of November.
Mr. Speaker, this is Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis. We're calling you together because we'd like to discuss, obviously, the election.
Hello, Mr. Speaker. This is Jenna Ellis, and I'm here with Mayor Giuliani.
Hey, Brian, it's Rudy. I really have something important to call to your attention. I think really.
All right, so let me cut in here. So they're talking about the scheme. Let me pull up a couple things here. I pulled this up a moment ago. So they said violence in the streets is really bad. It's all terrible. So again, this is just a few weeks ago, folks. May 10th.
Comfortable with the protests that we saw outside the homes of Supreme Court justices over the weekend?
If protests are peaceful, yes. My house there's protests 3-4 times a week outside my house. That's the American way to peacefully protest is okay. And that's my wife. Sorry. Maybe there's a protest outside. But so as long as they are peaceful, that's okay with me.
All right. So again, just demonstrating the hypocrisy there, and then let me pull up. All right. Well, for some reason I can't pull up. All right. I was going to pull up something else, but let's go back to the hearing. I'll pull it up in a moment.
That the outreach was inappropriate and asked his lawyers to tell Rudy Giuliani to stop calling, but Giuliani continued to reach out.
I understand that you don't want to talk to me now. I just want to bring.
All right, so they're talking about the alternate electors. I know, and I'm going to be able to pull it up. Let me pull up Microsoft Word. There it is. So in our latest video, where's Microsoft Word? Come over here. No, that's not what I want. I got too many windows open here. All right, so this is the Electoral Count Act of 1877. We covered this in the video we put out on Sunday. It talks about, now I want you to watch this. Now this is the actual act. Now this is my service. So I pulled it down, right? It's 3 U.S.C. Section 15. It provides all of this. Congress shall be in session on the 6th day. It talks about how you, upon reading of the objections, calling for all of the things that I want you to watch this, because when we go down, it's going to pop up. Now, we're going to have to go back over to Safari to see what popped up, but I want you to watch this. This is what popped up. 3 U.S.C. Section 5, determination of controversy as to appointment of electors. If any state shall have provided by laws enacted prior to the day fixed for the appointment of electors for its determination of any controversy or contest concerning the appointment of all or any of the electors of the state by judicial or other methods or procedures. Let me highlight. Well, I thought I could highlight it. Yeah, there we go. Shall have been made at least 6 days before the time. So they had 6 days up until January 6th. All that stuff you're hearing is in December to do this, right? And they did it. So I don't know what the select committee is going for here. That's actually in the law. And, Trump and his people didn't just pull this out of thin air. It had been done before. This is not the first time. If you go, literally, just go to Google and pull up election of 1876. Watch it pop up. First one pops up is Google, a left-wing site. Read through it. You'll talk about 3 states sent alternate electors there. Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina. Bammo. It's been done before, folks. They're just basically trying to punish political dissent. That's what's going on here. But again, Trump did manage to get alternate electors there. They were there for that day. I'm not sure why they're doing this.
Former President Trump begins by calling you a rhino, Republican in name only. He then references a conversation in November 2020 in which he claims that you told him that the election was rigged and that he had won Arizona. To quote the former president, during the conversation, he told me the election was rigged and that I won Arizona, unquote. Did you have such a conversation with the president?
I did have a conversation with the president. That certainly isn't it, but there were parts of it that are true, but there are parts that are not, sir.
And the part that I read you, is that false?
Anywhere, anyone, anytime has said that I said the election was rigged, that would not be true.
And when the former president in his statement today claimed that you told him that he won Arizona, is that also false?
That is also false.
Mr. Bowers, I understand that after the election, and I don't know whether this is the conversation the former president is referring to, but after the election, you received a phone call from President Trump and Rudy Giuliani in which they discussed the result of the presidential election in Arizona. If you would, tell us about that call and whether the former president or Mr. Giuliani raised allegations of election fraud.
Thank you. My wife and I had returned from attending our church meetings. It was on a Sunday, and we were still in the driveway, and I had received a call from a colleague telling me that the White House was trying to get in touch with her and I, and that she said, please, if you get a call, let's try to take this together. Immediately, I saw that the White House on my Bluetooth was calling, and I took the call and was asked by I would presume the operator at the White House if I would hold for the president, which I did, and Mr. Giuliani came on first, and niceties, then Mr. Trump, President Trump, then President Trump came on, and we initiated a conversation.
During that conversation, did you ask Mr. Giuliani for proof of these allegations of fraud that he was making?
On multiple occasions, yes.
And when you asked him for evidence of this fraud, what did he say?
He said that they did have proof, and I asked him, do you have names? For example, We have 200,000 illegal immigrants, some large number, 5,000 or 6,000 dead people, etc. And I said, do you have their names? Yes. Will you give them to me? Yes. The president interrupted and said, give the man what he needs, Rudy. He said, I will. And that happened on at least 2 occasions, that interchange.
Now, see, again, that's unexpected testimony. I don't know what Schiff's thinking, but there you go. You got Trump of an innocent state of mind. Give the man what he needs, Rudy, and Rudy says he's going to do it. Now, how are you going to pin that on Trump if it's Rudy doing this?
Conversation.
So Mr. Giuliani was claiming in the call that there were hundreds of thousands of undocumented people and thousands of dead people who had purportedly voted in the election?
Yes.
And you asked him for evidence of that?
I did.
And did you ever receive from him that evidence either during the call, after the call, or to this day?
Never.
What was the ask during this call? He was making these allegations of fraud, but he had something or a couple things that they wanted you to do. What were those?
The ones I remember were first that we would hold, that I would allow an official committee at the Capitol so that they could hear this evidence and that we could take action thereafter. And I refused. I said, up to that time, the circus, I called it a circus, had been brewing with lots of demonstrations, both at the counting center, at the Capitol, and other places. And
so, again, that doesn't sound like an unreasonable ask to me. And the fact that he didn't want to do it shows you, again, that's a conflict, folks. I mean, that's what you would be doing if I were the defense lawyer there. I would when I got my time, I would point this out, right? Again, this guy, for whatever reason, maybe he's an anti-Trumper, maybe he's not, maybe he truly is tired of this and wants to move on. We've talked about this several times on these live streams. What we're seeing from these hearings, again, this is from their witnesses, because there's no opposition, is that a lot of these people, are anti-Trumpers. And then a lot of them are just like, they just want it to go away. Biden, remember back then, a lot of people thought, well, Biden won't be so bad. Biden will be okay. It's just Joe Biden. Remember that we played, I think we played it one time, with the audio from Lindsey Graham saying, oh, come on. I mean, how can you get upset at Joe Biden? Well, now, of course, we see, but.
To have that in the House, I did not feel that the evidence, granted in its absence, merited a hearing, and I didn't want to be used as a pawn.
He's conflicted.
Other need that the committee hearing would fulfill. So that was the first ask, that we hold an official committee hearing.
And what was his second ask?
I said, to what end? To what end the hearing? He said, well, we have heard by an official high up in the Republican legislature that there is a legal theory or a legal ability in Arizona that you can remove the electors of President Biden and replace them. And we would like to have the legitimate opportunity through the committee to come to that end and remove that. And I said, that's totally new to me. I've never heard of any such thing.
Well, if you watch the Great American Mail, we just pulled it up.
And I said, look, you are asking me to do something that is counter to my oath when I swore to the Constitution to uphold it, and I also swore to the Constitution and the laws of the state of Arizona, and this is totally foreign as an idea or a theory to me, and I would never do anything of such magnitude without deep consultation with qualified attorneys. And I said, I've got some good attorneys, and I'm going to give you their names. You are asking me to do something against my oath, and I will not break my oath. And I think that was up to that point.
During the conversation, and you heard, I think, when we played a snippet of Mr. Giuliani calling other state legislators and saying that he was calling us essentially a fellow Republican, did he make a similar appeal to you or bring up the fact that you shared a similar party?
Whether it was in that call or in a later meeting, he did bring that up more than once.
And how would he bring that up?
He would say, aren't we all Republicans here? I would think we would get a better reception. I mean, I would think you would listen a little more open to my suggestions, that we're all Republicans.
And this evidence that you asked him for that would justify this extraordinary step, I think you said they never produced. Why did you feel, either in the absence of that evidence or with it, what they were asking you to do would violate your oath to the Constitution?
First of all, when the people, and in Arizona, I believe some 40 plus years earlier, the legislature had established the manner of electing our officials, or the electors for the presidential race. Once it was given to the people, as in Bush v. Gore, illustrated by the Supreme Court, it becomes a fundamental right of the people. So as far as I was concerned, for someone to ask me in the, I would call it a paucity, there was no evidence being presented of any strength. Evidence can be hearsay evidence, it's still evidence, but it's still hearsay. But strong judicial quality evidence, anything that would say to me, you have a doubt, deny your oath. I will not do that. And on more than one occasion throughout all this, that has been brought up, and it is a tenet of my faith.
This guy's going too far with this. He's clearly an anti-Trumper.
That the Constitution is divinely inspired of my most basic foundational beliefs. And so for me to do that because somebody just asked me to is foreign to my very being. I will not.
This is just over the top. I mean, look, I understand what he's saying, and I think when we hear from Rafflesberger, we're going to get something, I hope, a little bit more grounded. Like, look, this was controversial. It was very aggressive. You know, we just didn't want to do it. We thought that the proper thing was to go to the courts. This guy talking about divine and oath and all this stuff's over the top. I mean, come on, give me a break. And the other thing is, one of the things that I think the committee is missing with this, and this guy I think is unwittingly revealing, is that the Trump people were consistent in that, hey, we believe there's fraud, here, and here. Now, it is problematic for Trump that they never delivered evidence of the fraud, right?
During that conversation, Speaker Bowers, did you ask him if what he was proposing had ever been done before?
I did.
And what did he say?
He said, well, I'm not familiar with Arizona law or any other laws, but I don't think so. And that also was brought up in other conversations, both with him and with John Eastman and others.
Speaker Bowers,
now that's a bombshell. Again, that is problematic for Team Trump. I know the history, and I've been doing these things for a while, and I just showed you the election of 1876. If they don't know about the election of 1876, where alternate electors went, they got a problem.
A week after that call, Mr. Giuliani appeared with others associated with President Trump's effort to overturn the result of the election at a purported legislative hearing in a hotel ballroom in Phoenix. Was this an official hearing of the state legislature?
It was not.
And why was it not a real or official hearing of the legislature?
A legislator can hold a group meeting. You can call it a hearing. But when they ask me to have an official hearing, we establish it by protocols, public notice, etc. It's typically held at the Capitol, but it doesn't need to be. We can authorize a hearing off campus. And in this case, I had been asked on several occasions to allow a hearing. I had denied it, but said, you're free to hold a meeting, any meeting you want, to the person who asked, and which he ultimately did. I think he was a little frustrated, but he ultimately did.
This meeting was the same day, I believe, that the governor...
So I believe what they're trying to show here, at least just with respect to Arizona, is that the meeting by which they came up with the Arizona alternate slate for Trump that they sent to January 6th, right, that it was just done by a legislature but without official approval of the speaker. Now, again, it would be more powerful if they showed the rules. Just show me the rules, show where it says that. Again, we're taking this guy's word for it, and a lot of this is hearsay, but let's continue.
Arizona, Doug Ducey certified Biden as the winner of the presidential election in Arizona. Did you meet with Mr. Giuliani and his associates while they were in Phoenix sometime after that purported legislative hearing at the hotel?
Yes, I did, sir.
And at that meeting, did Mr. Giuliani raise any specific allegations of election fraud again?
His initial comments were, again, the litany of groups of illegal individuals or people deceased, etc. And he had brought that up, and I wasn't alone in that meeting. There were others, and other members of the Senate aggressively questioned him. And then I proceeded to question him on the proof that he was going to bring me, etc. But he did bring those up, yes.
And these other legislators were also Republican members of the Senate?
They were, yes, sir.
And did they also press him for proof of these allegations?
They pressed him very strongly. Two of them especially, very strongly.
And at some point, did Mr. Giuliani ask one of the other attorneys on his team to help him out with the evidence?
He did. He asked Jenna Ellis, who was sitting to his right. One thing was that it was more to the point of, was there sufficient evidence or action that we could justify the recalling of the electors? But at that part of the conversation, I know he referred to someone else. But he did ask, do we have the proof, to Jenna, Miss Ellis? And she said, yes. And I said, I want the names. Do you have the names? Yes. Do you have how they voted? We have all the information. I said, can you get to me that information? Did you bring it with you? She said, no. Both Mr. Giuliani asked her and I asked generally if they brought it with them. She said, no, it's not with me, but we can get it to you. And I said, then you didn't bring me the evidence, which was repeated in different iterations for some period of time.
At some point, did one of them make a comment that they didn't have evidence, but they had a lot of theories?
That was Mr. Giuliani.
And what exactly did he say, and how did that come up?
My recollection, he said, we've got lots of theories.
So let me stop right here. So a couple things important here. Again, they're not tying it to Trump because Trump is pointing to an underling, which is very Trumpy, saying, hey, you give them the evidence. He's still of an innocent state of mind, it seems to me, or he's acting and playing it very well. So, again, they're failing in that. But this guy, now he sounds more reasonable. Before he was saying, I have an oath and all this stuff. Now he sounded more reasonable. Just give me the evidence. Why don't you have the evidence? That to me is plausible, sounds good. And then the reason I was chuckling is Schiff, who I believe is an attorney, keeps asking leading questions. The reason you don't ask leading questions is you can't do it for your witness, right? And a leading question is any question for which the answer is yes or no. But you can see there, did he say blah, 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 blah? You've basically, Schiff is testifying. And he goes, oh, yes, I know what you're, yeah, it's just kind of silly, but anyway.
And I don't know if that was a gaffe or maybe he didn't think through what he said, but both myself and others in my group, the three in my group and my council, both remembered that specifically, and afterwards we kind of laughed about it.
And getting back to the ask in that phone call that preceded this meeting, he wanted you to have the legislature dismiss the Biden electors and replace them with Trump electors on the basis of these theories of fraud?
He did not say it in those exact words, but he did say that Arizona law, according to what he understood, that would be allowed and that we needed to come into session to take care of that, which initiated a discussion about, again, what I can legally and not legally do, and I can't go into session in Arizona unilaterally or on my sole prerogative.
In this meeting or at any other later time, did anyone provide you with evidence of election fraud sufficient to affect the outcome of the presidential election in Arizona?
No one provided me ever such evidence.
The Select Committee has uncovered evidence in the course of our investigation that had stopped the steal protests at state capitals across the country. There were individuals with ties to the groups or parties involved in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. One of those incursions took place in the Arizona House of Representatives building, as you can see in this footage. This is previously undisclosed video of protesters illegally entering and refusing to leave the building. One of the individuals prominently shown in this video is Jacob Chansley. Perhaps better known as the QAnon shaman, this rider entered the Capitol on January 6th, was photographed leaving a threatening note on the dais in the U.S. Senate chamber, and was ultimately sentenced to 41 months in prison after pleading guilty to obstruction of an official proceeding. Other protesters who occupied the Arizona House of Representatives building included Proud Boys, while men armed with rifles stood just outside the entrance. I understand these protesters were calling for you by name, Speaker Bowers. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Speaker Bowers, did the president call you again in later in December?
He did, sir.
Did you tell the president in that second call that you supported him, that you voted for him, but that you were not going to do anything illegal for him?
I did, sir.
Nevertheless, his lawyer, John Eastman, called you some days later on June 4th, 2021. And he did have a very specific ask that would have required you to do just what you had already told the president you wouldn't do, something that would violate your oath. Is that correct?
That's correct. It wasn't just me. I had my counsel and others on the call.
And what did Dr. Eastman want you to do?
That we would, in fact, take a vote to overthrow, or I shouldn't say overthrow, that we would decertify the electors, and that because we had plenary authority to do so. And he cited Article 2, Section 1, I think it's Clause 2, and said that in his opinion that gave us the authority if there was, I don't recall him saying sufficient evidence, but there was some call or some strong reason to do so or justification to do so that we could do that. And that he was asking that his suggestion was that we would do it. And I said, again, I took an oath. For me to take that, to do what you do, would be counter to my oath. I don't recall if it was in that conversation, clearly, that we talked more about the oath, but I said, what would you have me do? And he said, just do it and let the court sort it out. And I said, you're asking me to do something that's never been done in history, the history of the United States, and I'm going to put my state through that without sufficient proof, and that's going to be good enough with me? That I would put us through that, my state, that I swore to uphold both in Constitution and in law? No, sir. He said, well, that's my suggestion would be just do it and let the courts.
I mean, again, this is bad for Dr. Eastman, but again, you have to remember you're listening to one-sided testimony, and that's why it's not as effective as it could otherwise be. Because I'd like to hear from Eastman. I'd like to hear what his version was. Of course, I knew about 1876. Of course, I knew about the Electoral Count Act. Of course, I gave him the citations, right? We don't know any of that, unfortunately.
Figure it all out. And he didn't use that exact phrase, but that was what his meaning was, and I declined, and I believe that was close to the end of our phone call.
And again, this took place after you had recently spoken with President Trump and told him that you wouldn't do anything illegal for him. Is that right?
It wasn't days after. Obviously, it was days after, but a few days had gone by.
But you had told President Trump you would not do anything illegal for him.
I did, both times.
And you told Dr. Eastman that you did not believe there was legal support to justify what he was asking, but he still wanted you to do it and effectively let the courts work it out?
I've been warned, don't say things you think maybe he said, but I do remember him saying that the authority of the legislature was plenary and that you can do it. I said, then you should know that I can't even call the legislature into session without a 2/3 majority vote. We're only 30 plus 1. There's no way that could happen.
But in your view, what he was asking you to do would have violated your oath to the Constitution, both the United States Constitution and the Constitution of the state of Arizona?
Yes, sir.
Objection, leading.
Did you also receive a call from U.S. Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona on the morning of January 6th?
I did.
And what did Mr. Biggs ask you to do?
I believe that was the day that the vote was occurring to each state to have certification, or to declare the certification of the electors. And he asked if I would sign on both to a letter that had been sent from my state and or that I would support the decertification of the electors. And I said I would not.
Mr. Speaker, on December 4th, 2020, shortly after your meeting with Rudy Giuliani and other allies of President Trump, you released a statement publicly addressing, quote, calls for the legislature to overturn the 2020 certified election results. The statement is very straightforward in explaining the, quote, breathtaking request, unquote, made by representatives of President Trump, quote, that the Arizona legislature overturn the certified results of last month's election and deliver the state's electoral college votes to President Trump, unquote. Why did you believe, as you wrote in this statement, that the rule of law forbid you from doing what President Trump and his allies wanted you to do?
Okay, so again, this is just inartful on the part of the committee, I think, to bring this up. I mean, he's already testified to this, and then so now they're saying, oh, you felt strongly enough to put a statement out there. Well, the flip side of that, if you have opposition, which they don't, is that, well, clearly, you notice the tone, overturn the election, right? I mean, he could come out and say, look, folks, these people are coming to me claiming there's fraud in our election. They seem to believe it. They want me to do something, but I don't have the power to do it. I'm sorry. I wish I did, but I don't. And if what they're saying is true, it's awful, but I don't have the power, right? It's not that. It's they're trying to overturn the election, right? They're already sort of assuming things that they haven't even established with his testimony today, which is Giuliani, although apparently they're a little inartful, if we believe one side of it, that they keep maintaining that they're not just saying do this because we're Republicans, they're maintaining there's fraud. But anyway, there's the statement.
Representative, I'm sorry, I should be saying, Mr. Chairman, Representative Schiff, there's two sides to the answer. One is, what am I allowed to do, and what am I forbidden to do? We have no legal pathway, both in state law nor to my knowledge in federal law, for us to execute such a request. And I am not allowed to walk or act beyond my authority. If I'm not specifically authorized as a legislator, as a legislature, then I cannot act to the point of calling us into session. Some say that just a few legislators have plenary authority, and that has come as part of all of this discussion, I'll call it. But so to not have authority and be forbidden to act beyond my authority on both counts, I am not authorized to take such action, and that would deny my oath.
In your statement, you included excerpts from President Ronald Reagan's inaugural address in 1981. The newly inaugurated president told the country, quote, the orderly transfer of authority as called for in the Constitution routinely takes place as it has for almost 2 centuries, and few of us stop to think how unique we really are. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. Tell us, if you would, Mr. Speaker, why did you include President Reagan's words in your public statement?
More over-the-top stuff, just more
Mr. Chairman,
evidence that he's over the top with this.
Because I have a lot of admiration for Ronald Reagan. I've had the opportunity of going through his home with one other person and walking through, and I have a lot of admiration for him. When he pointed out, which is, I have lived in other country for a period of time and have visited a few countries, and during election times, the fact that we allow an election, support an election, and stand behind the election, even in the past when they're...
Folks, this stuff isn't effective. I don't know why they think it is. I mean, they obviously thought the election was stolen, right? A lot of people think that. I'm not saying it was. I'm not taking an opinion. But if this is not like other places where they know there's no fraud, that there's no legitimate election. It's just over the top stuff that they would be better off just dropping this kind of stuff.
And serious questions about the election, and then move on without disturbance and with acceptance that we choose to follow the outcome of the will of the people. That will, it means a lot to me, and I know it meant a lot to him, and so we included that.
Thank you, Speaker Bowers. I now want to look even more deeply at the fake electors scheme. Every 4 years, citizens from all over the United States go to the polls to elect their president. Under our Constitution, when we cast our votes for president, we are actually voting to send electors pledged to our preferred candidate to the Electoral College. In December, the electors in each state meet, cast their votes, and send those votes to Washington. There is only one legitimate slate of electors from each state. On the 6th day of January, Congress meets in a joint session to count those votes, and the winner of the Electoral College vote becomes the president. In this next segment, you'll hear how President Trump and his campaign were directly involved in advancing and coordinating the plot to replace legitimate Biden electors with fake electors not chosen by the voters. You'll hear how this campaign convinced these fake electors to cast and submit their votes through fake certificates, telling them that their votes would only be used in the event that President Trump won his legal challenges. Yet when the president lost those legal challenges, when courts rejected them as frivolous and without merit, the fake elector scheme continued. At this point, President Trump's own lawyers, so-called Team Normal, walked away rather than participate in the plan. And his own White House counsel's office said that the plan was not legally sound. Let's play the following video produced by the Select Committee.
Oh, nice.
My name is Casey Lucier. I'm an investigative counsel for the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. On November 18th, a lawyer working with the Trump campaign named Kenneth Cheesebro wrote a memo arguing that the Trump campaign should organize its own electors in the swing states that President Trump had lost. The Select Committee received testimony that those close to President Trump began planning to organize fake electors for Trump in states that Biden won in the weeks after the election.
Who do you remember being involved in those early discussions around the Thanksgiving time regarding having alternate electors meet?
Mr. Giuliani, several of Mr. Giuliani's associates, Mr. Meadows.
So notice how they've got, just real quick here. So this is Casey Lucier, and she's an investigator. And so she works for them in secret, and she's trained to use the language. The fake electors. Well, if they're fake electors, why hasn't somebody gone to prosecute them? Why haven't they been indicted? Why don't we hear about this? The only people calling them fake electors are the January 6th committee. And you're not going to see any indictments. You're not going to see any of this happen because none of this is illegal. This is called political disagreement. But anyway. Oh, and by the way, one other thing that they're messing up here. They keep saying this has never been done. We don't know about this. But now, apparently, according to this testimony, as of Thanksgiving, people are coming up with this scheme, quote unquote. I guarantee they got that from the Electoral Count Act, which was passed in response to the election of 1876, where people did send alternate electors. And it had been done before. It happened in 1960 with Hawaii. And these people are just over the top as per usual, and they're just getting out in front of their skis.
Congress, although it's difficult to distinguish if the members that I'm thinking of were involved during Thanksgiving or if they were involved as we progressed through December.
At the president's direct request, the RNC assisted the campaign in coordinating this effort.
What did the president say when he called you?
Essentially, he turned the call over to Mr. Eastman, who then proceeded to talk about the importance of the RNC helping the campaign gather these contingent electors in case any of the legal challenges that were ongoing changed the result of any of the states. I think more just helping them reach out and assemble them. But my understanding is the campaign did take the lead and we just were helping them in that role.
As President Trump and his supporters continued to lose lawsuits, some campaign lawyers became convinced that convening electors in states that Trump lost was no longer appropriate.
I just remember I either replied or called somebody saying, unless we have litigation pending that's like in these states, like.
So real quick here, this is a little bit subtle, but here's what's going on. So what they're trying to say now is that even if it was innocent from the beginning, in other words, we plan on a court, say, for example, striking a bunch of these ballots and the state later certifying for Trump. Some people were in on it at that point. Once they started to lose in court and it looked like nobody was going to do that, people like Justin Clark here decided they were against it, right? So that's what they're saying there. And again, that's hearkening back to 1960, where Nixon, as the vice president under Eisenhower, presided, right, in 1961, January 6, 1961, and Hawaii had sent 2 electors because they had done a recount, and while Nixon won the original, Kennedy won the recount, so they reconvened and sent alternate electors. There's basic point here is at some point, some that were in on it now said, this isn't right if we don't have a chance, okay? That's what's going on.
I don't think this is appropriate, or this isn't the right thing to do. I don't remember how I phrased it, but I got into a little bit of a back and forth, and I think it was with Ken Cheeseborough, where I said, all right, you just get after it. Like, I'm out.
At that point, I had Josh Finley email Mr. Chesbrough politely to say, this is your task. You are responsible for the Electoral College issues moving forward. And this was my way of taking that responsibility to zero.
The committee learned the White House counsel's office also felt the plan was potentially illegal.
And so to be clear, did you hear the White House counsel's office say that this plan to have alternate electors meet and cast votes for Donald Trump in states that he had lost was not legally sound?
Yes, sir.
And who was present for that meeting that you remember?
It was in our office. It was Mr. Meadows, Mr. Giuliani, and a few of Mr. Giuliani's associates.
The Select Committee interviewed several of the individual fake electors, as well as Trump campaign staff who helped organize the effort.
We were just, kind of useful idiots or rubes at that point. A strong part of me really feels that it's just kind of as the road continued and as that was failure, that got formulated as what do we have on the table? Let's just do it.
And now, after what we've told you today about the Select Committee's investigation about the conclusion of the professional lawyers on the campaign staff, Justin Clark, Matt Morgan, and Josh Finley, about their unwillingness to participate in the convening of these electors, how does that contribute to your understanding of these issues?
I'm angry. Because I think in a sense, no one really cared if people were potentially putting themselves in jeopardy.
Would you have not wanted to participate in this any further as well?
I absolutely would not have. Had I known that the 3 main lawyers for the campaign that I'd spoken to in the past and were leading up.
Nothing to see here. I mean, again, there's disagreement within the team. Okay, fine. But again, folks, political disagreement is not breaking the law. And here's somebody here who probably, we don't know if he's been given immunity or threatened or what, but under pressure is saying something that's helpful to them. This is why you don't have show trials. You have real trials.
We're not on board. Yeah.
I was told that these would only count if a court ruled in our favor. So that would have been using our electors, it would have been using our electors in ways that we weren't told about, and we wouldn't have supported.
Documents obtained by the Select Committee indicate that instructions were given to the electors in several states that they needed to cast their ballots in complete secrecy. Because this scheme involved fake electors, those participating in certain states had no way to comply with state election laws, like where the electors were supposed to meet. One group of fake electors even considered hiding overnight to ensure that they could access the state capitol, as required in Michigan.
Did Mr. Norton say who he was working with at all on this effort to have electors meet?
He said he was working with the president's campaign. He told me that the Michigan Republican electors were planning to meet in the Capitol and hide overnight so that they could fulfill the role of casting their vote in per law in the Michigan chambers. And I told him in no uncertain terms that that was insane and inappropriate.
In one state, the fake electors even asked for a promise that the campaign would pay their legal fees if they got sued or charged with a crime. Ultimately, fake electors did meet on December 14th, 2020 in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Nevada, and Wisconsin. At the request of the Trump campaign, the electors from these battleground states signed documents falsely asserting that they were the, quote, duly elected electors from their state, and submitted them to the National Archives and to Vice President Pence in his capacity as President of the Senate. Here is what some of the fake elector certificates look like as compared to the real ones. But these ballots had no legal effect. In an email produced to the Select Committee, Dr. Eastman told a Trump campaign representative that it did not matter that the electors had not been approved by a state authority. Quote, the fact that we have multiple slates of electors demonstrates the uncertainty of either. That should be enough. He urged that Pence act boldly and be challenged. Documents produced to the Select Committee show that the Trump campaign took steps to ensure that the physical copies of the fake electors' electoral votes from 2 states were delivered to Washington for January 6th. Text messages exchanged between Republican Party officials in Wisconsin show that on January 4th, the Trump campaign asked for someone to fly their fake electors' documents to Washington. A staffer for Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson texted a staffer for Vice President Pence just minutes before the beginning of the joint session. This staffer stated that Senator Johnson wished to hand-deliver to the Vice President the fake electors' votes from Michigan and Wisconsin. The Vice President's aide unambiguously instructed them not to deliver the fake votes to the Vice President. Even though the fake elector slates were transmitted to Congress and the executive branch, the Vice President held firm in his position that his role was to count lawfully submitted electoral votes.
Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 232 votes.
Which is what he did when the joint session resumed on January 6th after the attack on the Capitol.
What we just heard in that video was an aide to the White House Chief of Staff telling this committee that the White House counsel's office felt that this fake electors plan was not legally sound. Nevertheless, the Trump campaign went forward with the scheme anyway. Speaker Bowers, were you aware that fake electors had met in Phoenix on December 14th and purported to cast electoral votes for President Trump?
I was not.
When you learned that these electors had met and sent their electoral votes to Washington, what did you think?
Well, I thought of the book, The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. And I just thought, this is a tragic parody.
Mr. Bowers, I understand that as you flew from Phoenix to Washington yesterday, you reflected upon some passages from a personal journal that you were keeping in December 2020 while all of this was taking place. With your permission, I'm wondering if you would be willing to share one passage in particular with us.
Objection, leading.
Thank you very much.
Objection, hearsay as well, by the way.
It is painful to have friends who have been such a help to me turn on me with such rancor. I may, in the eyes of men, not hold correct opinions or act according to their vision or convictions, but I do not take this current situation in a light manner, a fearful manner, or a vengeful manner. I do not want to be a winner by cheating. I will not play with laws I swore allegiance to, with any contrived desire towards deflection of my deep foundational desire to follow God's will as I believe He led my conscience to embrace.
Yeah, geez. Over the top.
How else will I ever approach him in the wilderness of life, knowing that I ask this guidance only to show myself a coward in defending the course he let me take.
Oh, my God.
He led me to take.
Oh, goodness.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Those are powerful words. I understand that taking the...
Again, this is what a show trial is. Again, they went through millions of pieces of evidence. And somehow or another, he wrote that. He could have wrote that this morning for all we know, folks. There's no cross-examination. There's no foundation. He wasn't asked when he wrote it, how he wrote it. No one's gotten to see it. You've just been shown that. That's somebody who obviously disagrees politically with the people who've done things. If it's so over the top and absurd, it's not going to go anywhere, right? But again, somehow or another, they had to have violence on January 6th to keep those objections from going forward. But anyway, this person is, again, to me, what Schiff doesn't understand, and they think it's all a show, is he's showing himself to be a clear, rabid partisan at this point. I mean, he's writing this thing, and he's choking up and stuff, this huge, over-the-top thing. If it's so ridiculous, it's ridiculous. Anyway.
Positions that you did following the 2020 election in defense of the rule of law and protecting the voters of Arizona resulted in you and your family being subjected to protests and terrible threats. Can you tell us how this impacted you and your family?
Well, as others in the videos have mentioned, we received, my secretaries would say, in excess of 20,000 emails and tens of thousands of voicemails and texts, which saturated our offices and we were unable to work, or at least communicate. But at home, up till even recently, it is the new pattern, or a pattern in our lives, to worry what will happen on Saturdays, because we have various groups come by and they have had video panel trucks with videos of me proclaiming me to be a pedophile and a pervert and a corrupt and politician, and blaring loudspeakers in my neighborhood and leaving literature both on my property, but arguing and threatening with neighbors and with myself. I don't know if I should name groups, but there was one gentleman that had the 3 bars on his chest, and he had a pistol and was threatening my neighbor, not with the pistol, but just vocally. When I saw the gun, I knew I had to get close. And at the same time, on some of these, we had a daughter who was gravely ill, who was upset by what was happening outside. And my wife, that was a valiant person, very, very strong, quiet, very strong woman. So it was disturbing. It was disturbing.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for your service to the state of Arizona and to the country. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I think it'd be appropriate to take a short recess. Accordingly, I reserve the balance of my time.
It always cracks me up when they do that, as if there's opposition.
The chair requests that those in the hearing room remain seated until the Capitol Police have escorted members and witnesses from the room. We'll have 5 minutes, 5-minute recess.
Okay, we're going to try to cover some things during this 5-minute recess. Anyway, they scored some points. I mean, as the last thing you saw there, they scored quite a few points there. I mean, look, nobody likes the violence. Now, again, I've already showed you today that Chuck Schumer's okay with people being outside of homes and whatnot and all of that. So let me just pause that there. Let me try to bring up my other, if I can find it. There's a couple of things I had brought up. Let me pull that over here. Try to make it the same size so we don't get confused. It's still not quite the same size. It's close enough for government work. So just so you understand what they were debunking today. So see if I can get it to the right place what the Green Bay sweep was. Oh. It would help if we had some volume, huh?
The committee has been operating for about 11 months.
Related concept of testimonial immunity for senior standing up for principle. The most important one is about executive privilege and the related concept.
That's not the right video. All right, let's go to Matt Al. So here's what they're doing today to debunk this. Matt Al talked about this. It looks like this was December 22nd, so of last year. Take a listen. Oh, come on. Internet. Still no bad. No, if we get this.
10 of them signing their names to this Capitol. Fake electors were also meeting elsewhere in the same. That while that real meeting of the real electors was happening inside the state capitol, fake electors were also meeting elsewhere in the same state capitol at the same time on the same day. Quote, an hour after the Wisconsin Supreme Court affirmed Joe Biden as the winner of the November 3rd presidential election in Wisconsin, Wisconsin Republicans refused to accept the result and met at the state capitol to put forward their own slate of electors. While 10 Democratic electors met inside Governor Tony Evers' office to finalize the state's 10 electoral votes for President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, Republicans convened to cast votes for President Donald Trump. What do you mean cast votes? The details on this are amazing. In Wisconsin, the Republicans did it privately, and I kid you not, they forged all the paperwork to make it seem like they were the real electors. Look, we have the paperwork that they forged. Look, certificate of the votes of the 2020 electors from Wisconsin. We, the undersigned, being the duly and qualified electors for President and Vice President of the United States of America from the state of Wisconsin, do hereby certify the following. A, that we convened and organized at the state capitol in the city of Madison, Wisconsin at noon on the 14th day of December 2020 to perform the duties enjoined upon us. B, that being so assembled and duly organized, we proceeded to vote by ballot and balloted first for president and then for vice president by distinct ballots. And C, that the following are all of the votes for president and all of the votes for vice president, so cast aforesaid. It all sounds very official, right? Until you get to this part. Who were the votes cast for? Donald J. Trump, number of votes, 10. Michael R. Pence, number of votes, 10. We, what are they? The duly and qualified electors? Yeah, then they all signed it as if this were a real.
So again, you can see there, it looks like it's the 14th of December of 2020, and those are the names. So this was Rachel Maddow, December of last year. So we're talking, what, almost 7 months ago? This has been known. All right, we've known about this for quite some time. I don't know why the January 6th committee now is meeting to do this and talk about this, but this was the so-called Green Bay sweep. This is
all right, great to be.
It's going to make us see an ad. All right, pause the ad while we'll get rid of the ad in a few seconds. This is what Ari Melber was talking about with Navarro. He's actually got a book about the daggum thing. Turn the
trade guy, but tonight I think to basically have only legal votes counted in the election, and we had
you mentioned
recruited,
that we prepared for that. So let's take a look. You mentioned this. This plan. Here's Steve Bannon talking about it on January 6th.
All right. This is the Green Bay sweep. That's what they were getting together.
So I keep saying the mantra. You call the play, now run the play. Right? It's like the old Green Bay power sweep. It's very simple. It's very, just one thing leads to another, very logical, and the victories are firm.
So go ahead and tell us in your own words, what was the plan and who was in on it besides you, Bannon, and Trump?
Sure. The backstory is while I was in the administration after the election, beginning on Thanksgiving, I produced what would be an exhaustive 3-volume report. I went over tens of thousands of pages of documents and proved that the election was in all likelihood stolen through fraud and election irregularities. That's the background. On January 6th, the Green Bay sweep plan.
Now, see, I want you to watch. This is the problem I think they're having. Everybody understands Navarro's telling his side of the story, but they're so wrapped up in their world, they can't even let somebody have an alternate viewpoint. Unless, of course, they want to claim a different gender or something like that, or, 1,500 different, sexes or something. That's fine. But so he has to interrupt him here Nobody's confused that what Navarro is saying is Navarro's opinion. But listen to him interrupt him here.
False, but the question for the start of the interview.
We'll
yes, it is
disagree
fine.
about that,
but the question for the start of the interview is, I just want to make sure here that we're kind of going by rules of the road. The question is, and you'll get time to talk.
You got to say that. And what I'm saying is that
I don't have to say anything, sir. I'm asking you. The question is, what was the plan itself and who was in on it?
Exactly. And I'm going to tell you that. The plan was simply this. We had over 100 congressmen and senators on Capitol Hill ready to implement the sweep. The sweep was simply that. We were going to challenge the results of the election in the 6 battleground states. They were Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, Nevada, and basically these were the places where we believed that if the votes were sent back to those battleground states and looked at again, that there would be enough concern amongst the legislatures that most or all of those states would decertify the election. That would throw the election to the House of Representatives.
All right, so that's enough of that. And what I want to show with this is, and what the committee is trying to do today, is they are essentially trying to say that plan. And again, I want you to understand the slight difference that's going on there. Is they're saying, well, there's a difference between alternate electors that are going to overturn what Biden's victory. That's not what I understand Navarro to be talking about. So again, because we're getting a one-sided hearing today, we really don't precisely know exactly what the plan was. He talked about kicking it to the House of Representatives. Now, I think if we had opposition here, what I think you're going to find, if Trump ever does get equal time, which he's asked for, I doubt he'll get it, but if he did, I think what they're going to try to say is, no, we were just trying to get people within the legislature to say, look, we've got questions about this election. Let's send them down there for January 6th. Let the House of Representatives and let the Senate raise the objections. And so we talked about this. Let's go over to our Substack page, and we got to keep an eye on the let's keep an eye on the January 6th committee, make sure they're not going.
Thanks to Leaf Filter, I don't have to worry.
Before Leaf Filter,
off. We don't want to listen to an ad. Let's make sure we're not missing it. Maybe they are going.
And we're not going to forget it.
Yep, they're back. All right.
So the state of Georgia is where we will turn our attention to next. I want to emphasize that our investigation into these issues is still ongoing. As I stated in our last hearing, if you have relevant information or documentary evidence to share with the Select Committee, we welcome your cooperation.
It's a quick 5 minutes.
But we will share some of our findings with you today. Secretary Raffensperger, thank you for being here today. You've been a public servant in Georgia since 2015, serving first as a member of the Georgia House of Representatives, and then since January 2019 as Georgia's Secretary of State. As a self-described conservative Republican, is it fair to say that you wanted President Trump to win the 2020 election?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Secretary, many witnesses have told the Select Committee that Election Day, November 3rd, 2020, was a largely uneventful day in their home states. In spite of the challenges of conducting an election during a pandemic, you wrote in the Washington Post that the election was, quote, successful. Tell us, what was your impression of how Election Day had proceeded in Georgia?
On Election Day in November, our election went remarkably smooth. In fact, we meet at the GEMA headquarters. That's the Georgia Energy Emergency Management Association meeting location, but we were following wait times in line. In the afternoon, our average wait time was 3 minutes statewide that we were recording for various precincts, and it actually got down to 2 minutes. And at the end of the day, we felt that we had a successful election from the standpoint of the administration and the operation of the election.
So again, just to be clear here, Brad Raffensperger says that Brad Raffensperger did a good job. The Georgia Secretary of State says the Georgia Secretary of State Department did a good job. Like, there's no problem with our election, okay? Just understand. I mean, he's conflicted here, but it's fine. Let's hear what he has to say.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Raffensperger, did Joe Biden win the 2020 presidential election in Georgia, and by what margin?
President Biden carried the state of Georgia by approximately 12,000 votes.
And Mr. Secretary, as I understand it, your office took several steps to ensure the accuracy of the vote count in Georgia, reviewing the vote count in at least 3 different ways. These steps included a machine recount, a forensic audit, and a full hand recount of every one of the 5 million ballots cast. Did these efforts, including a recount of literally every ballot cast in the state of Georgia, confirm the result?
Yes, they did. We counted the ballots where the first tabulation would be scanned.
Okay, folks, I hate when they do this, but the left always does this. Recounts, you just recount the already votes. I mean, if there are fraudulent votes, and I'm not saying there were, but if there were, and if the methods were problematic, a recount doesn't do anything. All right, it's just silly.
When we did our 100% hand audit of the all 5 million ballots in the state of Georgia, all cast in place, all absentee ballots, they were all hand recounted, and they came remarkably close to the first count. And then, upon the election being certified, President Trump, because he was within 0.5%, could ask for a recount. And then we recounted them again through the scanners, and we got remarkably the same count. 3 counts, all remarkably close, which showed that President Trump did come up short.
Okay, first off, he did not do a forensic audit of 5 million votes. That is an outright lie. What they did is they went to various counties and they took 10,000 or 5,000 or whatever they took, and they looked at those. Okay, but again, if the ballots had been somehow manipulated, for example, if the 2,000 mules is correct and they had been dropped in drop boxes, a recount or even a looking at them, but going back and looking at them wouldn't get to that. So again, he's giving false testimony here. But the whole forensic audit of 5 million votes is a lie.
Nevertheless, as you will see, the president and his allies began making numerous false allegations of voter fraud. False allegations that you and Mr. Sterling, among others, had to address. Mr. Sterling, thank you also for being here today. Following the 2020 election, in addition to your normal duties, I understand that you became a spokesperson to try to combat disinformation about the election and the danger it was creating for elections officials, among others. In a December 1 press conference, you addressed some of your remarks directly to President Trump. Let's take a look at what you said that day.
It's going to show he's conflicted again. I don't know why they're showing this. We've already seen it.
It looks like you likely lost the state of Georgia. We're investigating. There's always a possibility. I get it. And you have the rights to go through the courts. What you don't have the ability to do, and you need to step up and say this, is stop inspiring people to commit potential acts of violence. Someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to get shot. Someone's going to get killed. And it's not right. It's not right.
Mr. Sterling, what prompted you to make these remarks?
Mr. Schiff, we had a previously scheduled press conference that day, as we were in the habit of doing, trying to be as transparent as we could about the election and the counts going on. A little after lunch that day, lunchtime, I received a call from the project manager from Dominion Voting Systems, who was oddly, audibly shaken. She's not the kind of person I would assume would be that way. She has a master's from MIT, a graduate of the Naval Academy, and was very much on the ball and pretty unflappable. And she informed me about a young contractor they had who had been receiving threats from a video that had been posted by some QAnon supporters. And at that point, we had been steeping in this kind of stuff. So it was around us all the time. So I didn't take note of it more than adding to the pile of other stuff we were having to deal with. And I did pull up Twitter, and I scrolled through it, and I saw the young man's name. It was a particular tweet that, for lack of a better word, was a straw that broke the camel's back. Had the young man's name. It was a very unique name. I believe it was a first-generation American. And it said, had his name, "You committed treason. May God have mercy on your soul," with a slowly twisting gif of a noose. And for lack of a better word, I lost it. I just got irate.
So I'm going to keep saying this. I mean, this is showing conflict. This is showing. I mean, this is almost PTSD type stuff here. I mean, these guys are still angry about all this happening. I remember this very distinctly. I was here at the time, and people were inflamed. People were upset, and there was allegations of voter fraud, which Raffensperger and Sterling never really looked into. They basically just threw their hands up. He's not talking about the bargain they made to diminish the ability to check the absentee ballots in Georgia. So they had been sued, and as part of the settlement for the suit, they decided to loosen the signature requirements. Also, as it relates to the absentee ballots in Georgia, they were supposed to keep a way of going back and checking when the ballot is taken out of the absentee envelope, but they didn't. So when they wanted to go back and count those, they couldn't rematch it up. So these witnesses are conflicted. Obviously, they're going to say A, we did a great job. B, the violence was a problem and Trump caused it. Well, it wasn't Trump causing it. It was a lot of Georgia people felt like they had been, the state had been rigged and there had been things that had happened, and they were angry.
My boss was with me at the time, the Deputy Secretary, Jordan Fuchs, and she could tell that I was angry. I tend to turn red from here up when that happens, and that happened at that time. And she called Secretary Raffensperger to say, we're seeing these kind of threats, and Gabe thinks we need to say something about it. And Secretary said yes, and that's what prompted me to do what I did. I lost my temper, but it seemed necessary at the time because it was just getting worse. And
again, that doesn't help him. I mean, so the testimony that we just saw, which by the way is rank hearsay, out of state court statement, comes in. Now we know that he was upset when he said it. So how much credence should we really give it?
I could not tell you why that particular one was the one that put me over the edge, but it did.
Now, after you made this plea to the president, did Donald Trump urge his supporters to avoid the use of violence?
Not to my knowledge.
Now, as we know, the president was aware of your speech
he said it
because he tweeted
times.
about
So
it later
silly.
that day. Let's take a look at what the president said. In the tweet, Donald Trump claims that there was, quote, massive voter fraud in Georgia. Mr. Sterling, that was just plain false, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Nevertheless, the very next day, on
It's his
December
opinion.
2nd, President Trump released a lengthy video again making false claims of election fraud in Georgia. Let's take a look at what he said this time.
They found thousands and thousands of votes that were out of whack, all against me.
In fact, the day after Donald Trump released that video, so now we're talking just 2 days after the emotional warning that you gave that someone's going to get killed, representatives of President Trump appeared in Georgia, including Rudy Giuliani, and launched a new conspiracy theory that would take on a life of its own and threaten the lives of several innocent election workers. This story falsely alleges that sometime during election night, election workers at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia,
Can't believe they're going to
poll
run this up here
observers.
again.
After the observers left, the story goes, these workers pulled so-called suitcases of ballots from under a table and ran those ballots through counting machines multiple times. Completely without evidence, President Trump and his allies claimed that these suitcases contained as many as 18,000 ballots, all for Joe Biden. None of this was true. But Rudy Giuliani appeared before the Georgia State Senate and played a surveillance video from State Farm Arena, falsely claiming that it showed this conspiracy taking place. Here's a sample of what Mr. Giuliani had to say during that hearing.
And when you look at what you saw on the video, which to me was a smoking gun, powerful smoking gun, well, I don't have to be a genius to figure out what happened. And I don't have to be a genius to figure out that those votes are not legitimate votes. You don't put legitimate votes under a table. No. Wait until you throw the opposition out, and in the middle of the night, count them. We would have to be fools to think that.
President Trump's campaign amplified Giuliani's false testimony.
Okay, so there's a couple things going to go on. We're going to hear from, I believe her name is Shay Moss, but she's going to testify, and then I think we're going to be done. Real quickly as to what happened. Now, later it appears that people went in there and looked at the ballots under it. Originally, they were thought to be suitcases or some sort of illegal. It turns out they were actually legal ballots holders, at least. Okay, here's what happened. So they were told there was a water leak, or they were told we're going to quit counting for the night. It doesn't matter. They were told that. Poll watchers, Democrat, Republican, they leave. So that it's undisputed. No one disagrees with this. The poll watchers left. Then they said, oh, no, we're mistaken. Either there is no leak or it turns out somebody said we were going to stop and that's not correct. So then the poll workers went back and started, quote unquote, counting the ballots. So what has not been shown, and again, the committee, I think because they have no opposition and they're not self-aware as they should be, the fact remains that there was counting done with no people there. And this is the type of thing that, they tried to go, the thing Trump would try to go to a court to, and the court wouldn't hear it or would say, no matter, we don't have the authority to do this or that. Now, as it turns out, when the investigation ensued, again, Brad Lathersberger and Sterling, who are investigating themselves, they determined, yes, we did the good job and there was nothing to this, right? But we don't know where those ballots from. And again, let us see the evidence of the investigation. Let us talk to the investigator. Let us see the proof. We're not going to see it, okay? All we're going to see is a one-sided version of that. Just wanted to make sure you understand that controversy.
In a tweet pushing out the video footage, Giuliani likewise pushed out his testimony on social media. As you can see in this tweet, Mr. Giuliani wrote that it was, quote, now beyond doubt, unquote, that Fulton County Democrats had stolen the election. Later in this hearing, we'll hear directly from one of the election workers in this video about the effect these lies had on her and on her family. Mr. Sterling, did the investigators in your office review the entire surveillance tape from the State Farm Arena on election night?
They actually reviewed approximately 48 hours going over the time period where action was taking place at the counting center at State Farm Arena.
And what did the tape actually show?
Depending on which time you want to start, because as was mentioned, this conspiracy theory took on a life of its own, where they conflated a water main break that wasn't a water main break and throwing observers out and a series of other things. What it actually showed was Fulton County election workers engaging in normal ballot processing. One of the things that was very frustrating was the so-called suitcases of ballots from under the table. If you watch the entirety of the video, you saw that these were election workers who were under the impression they were going to get to go home around 10:30. People are putting on their coats. They're putting ballots that are prepared to be scanned into ballot carriers that are then sealed with tamper-proof seals so that they're not messed with. It's an interesting thing because you watch there's 4 screens of the video, and as you're watching it, you can see the election monitors in the corner with the press as they're taking these ballot carriers and putting them under the table. You see it there. One of the other hidden ones, if you looked at the actual tape, was on the outside of the table, just from the camera angle. You couldn't see it originally. And this goes under the no good deed goes unpunished. We were told that we were at GEMA, as the secretary pointed out, and we were told that it looked like they were shutting down the Fulton County counting. The secretary expressed some displeasure at that because we wanted to everybody keep counting so we could get to the results and know what was happening. So our elections director called their elections director, who was at another location because this was election day. There was 2 different places where ballot things were being done by the Fulton County office. So he called the elections director of Fulton, then called Ralph Jones, who was at the State Farm Arena, and said, what the heck are you doing? Go ahead and stay. And as you watch the video itself, you see him take the phone call as people are putting things away and getting ready to leave. And you can tell for about 15, 20 seconds, he does not want to tell these people they have to stay. He walks over, he thinks about it for a second, you see him come back to the corner of a desk and kind of slumps his shoulders and says, okay, y'all, we got to keep on counting. And then you see him take their coats off, get the ballots out. And then a secondary thing that you'll see on there is you'll have people who are counting ballots who a batch will go through, they will take them off and run that through again. What happens there is a standard operating procedure. If there is a misscan, if there's a misalignment, if it doesn't read right, these are high-speed, high-capacity scanners. So 3 or 4 will go through after a misscan. You have to delete that batch and put it back through again. And by going through the hand tally, as the secretary pointed out, we showed that if there had been multiple ballots scanned without a corresponding physical ballot, your counts would have been a lot higher than the ballots themselves. And by doing the hand tally, we saw 2 specific numbers that were met. The hand tally got us to a 0.1053% off of the total votes cast and 0.0099% on the margin, which is essentially dead on accurate. Most academic studies say on a hand tally you'll have between 1% and 2%, but because we use ballot marking devices where it's very clear what the voter intended, it made it a lot easier for us to conduct that hand count and show that none of that was true.
Now, I understand that when you reviewed these tapes and did the analysis, it disproved this conspiracy theory. But you still had to take a lot of steps.
So a couple things here. Again, we're not seeing the video. They have it, but they're not showing it to us. Okay, fine. We're supposed to take your word for it. Notice they haven't debunked. They haven't said anything about the fact that there were no poll watchers. So they've explained why the poll watchers were mistakenly told to go back, but there's no explanation why the poll watchers weren't counted and told to go back like the workers were told to go back. Again, this is another trick of the Democrats here, this conspiracy theory. I tweeted about this a couple days ago. There are no conspiracy theories. There are theories. When you say conspiracy to modify theory, that's an opinion. You don't like the theory, but it's a theory. But this is what they do a lot of that these days. But anyway, so now conspiracy theory.
Make sure the public knew the truth about these allegations, and you did frequent briefings for the press. Let's take a look at one of those press briefings, Mr. Sterling, that you held on December 7th to make the point that you just did today.
Move on to what I'm going to call Disinformation Monday. Out of the gate, many of y'all saw the videotape from State Farm Arena. I spent hours with our post-certified investigators, Justin Gray from WSB, spent hours with us going over this video to explain to people that what you saw, the secret suitcases with magic ballots, were actually ballots that had been packed into those absentee ballot carriers by the workers in plain view of the monitors and the press.
Now, see, notice how he's not at this press conference, and I remember this press conference when it happened. Notice how he's not going, look, we're very sorry that the poll watchers were not there, and this whole thing got a little bit going there because the poll watchers were mistakenly told to go home. See, he doesn't deal with that, and these people are themselves part of the problem, right? When he came forward with his tone, he was very dismissive. This is it. This is done. We're not going to talk about it. I mean, anyway.
What's really frustrating is the president's attorneys had this same videotape. They saw the exact same things the rest of us could see, and they chose to mislead state senators and the public about what was on that video. I'm quite sure that they will not characterize the video if they try to enter into evidence, because that is the kind of thing that could lead to sanctions, because it's obviously untrue. They knew it was untrue, and they continue to do things like this.
So again, they keep doing this. This is like the 10th or 15th time I've seen them do this, not in the but in the entire hearings, if you count the first three along with this one. Folks, this guy's clearly conflicted. He's angry at Trump. Now he doesn't like the way his lawyers are doing things. Folks, in a court of law, in front of a jury, this is not nearly as effective as they think it is. They shouldn't have played this. At least not the second
Sterling,
one.
despite
the first
the
one
efforts by your office to combat this misinformation by speaking out publicly and through local media, you were unable to match the reach of President Trump's platform and social media megaphone spreading these false conspiracy theories. What was it like to compete with a president who had the biggest bully pulpit in the world to push out these false claims?
For lack of a better word, it was frustrating. But oftentimes I felt
more impeachment himself, impeaching
was
himself.
Getting out, but that there was a reticence of people who needed to believe it because the President of the United States, whom many looked up to and respected, was telling them it wasn't true, despite the facts. And I characterized at one point, it was kind of like a shovel trying to empty the ocean. And yes, it was frustrating. I even have, family members who I had to argue with about some of these things, and I would show them things, and the problem you have is you're getting to people's hearts. I remember there's one specific, an attorney that we know that we showed and walked him through. This wasn't true. Okay, I get that. This wasn't true. Okay, I get that. This wasn't 5 or 6 things. But at the end, he goes, I just know in my heart they cheated. That's just, and so once you get past the heart, the facts don't matter as much. And our job, from our point of view, is to get the facts out, do our job, tell the truth, follow the Constitution, follow the law, and defend the institutions.
So I'm going to tell you, again, we're broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, we were here at that time. This is where I vote. I mean, I am in Fulton County in addition to the fact that I'm in Atlanta. Atlanta's in several counties. A couple things you have to understand from what's going on here, okay, and the dynamics is, first and foremost, these guys, Rafflesberger and Sterling, as you can see, they're upset. They're angry at the president. You can tell from their attitude. They just want this to go away. We just want it to stop. We're done. And you have to understand from their point of view, okay, they already know that even if Georgia flips, you still need at least 2 more states, depending on which states you need. Georgia's only 16 electoral votes, all right? He needed a lot more than that to flip it, okay? So that's part of the problem. The other problem that's going on here that no one's talking about, and I'm sure they're not going to talk about this, is that Fulton County officials that were running this are largely the black community. And these are largely, a lot of heavily black districts that this is going on. And Raffensperger, who's a Republican, does not want to upset the black community in Georgia, knowing he's got to run in 2022. So one of the things that they're not talking about here is that they're conflicted out for the reasons I've said before, and those are 2 additional conflicts that they had at this point. And the last thing here, people like Sterling and they're holier than thou, it sort of irritates me. If Raffensperger hadn't lied and said they looked at all 5 million, just bring the freaking ballots out. Let's get them all out here right now and take a look at them. Now, they won't satisfy whether they were themselves fraudulently cast, put in a drop box via a mule. We won't know that because there's no way to do that at this point. But they never have done that, and they're not doing that here.
Held. Let's take a look at what you were competing with. This is the former president speaking in Georgia on December 5th.
Evidence of fraud is overwhelming, and again, I'm going to ask you to look up at that very, very powerful and very expensive screen.
Hidden cases of possible ballots are rolled out from under a table. 4 people under a cloud of suspicion.
So, if you just take the crime of what those Democrat workers were doing, and by the way, there was no water main break. They said there was no water main break. That's 10 times more than I need to win this state. 10 times more. It's 10 times, maybe more than that, but it's 10 times more because we lost by a very close number.
In this committee's hearing last Monday, we heard from senior federal law enforcement officials, from the senior-most federal law enforcement official in Atlanta at the time, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District, B.J. Pack, as well as former Attorney General Bill Barr. They both testified that the allegations were thoroughly investigated and found to have no merit. Here is U.S. Attorney Pack.
Fired by Trump, by the way.
To Attorney General Barr, I told him that we looked into it. We've done several things, including interviewing the witnesses. I listened to the tapes and reviewed the videotape myself, and that there's nothing there. Giuliani was wrong in representing that this was a suitcase full of ballots.
And here's what Attorney General Bill Barr had to say about the same allegations.
This is going to be the BS or the...
Took a hard look at this ourselves, and based on our review of it, including the interviews of the key witnesses, the Fulton County allegations had no merit.
We also have testimony from senior Department of Justice officials establishing that they specifically told President Trump that these allegations had been thoroughly investigated and were completely without merit. Here's Acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue describing a phone conversation in which he specifically told President Trump that these allegations were false.
The president kept fixating on this suitcase that supposedly had fraudulent ballots and that the suitcase was rolled out from under the table. And I said, no, sir, there is no suitcase. You can watch that video over and over. There is no suitcase. There is a wheeled bin where they
carry the ballots. No matter how many times senior Department of Justice officials, including his own Attorney General, told the president that these allegations were not true, President Trump kept promoting these lies and putting pressure on state officials to accept them. On January 2nd, the president had a lengthy telephone conversation with Secretary Raffensperger. Prior to the president's call, though, I want to share a bit of important context. First, the White House, including the former president's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, repeatedly called or texted the secretary's office some 18 times in order to set up this call. They were quite persistent. Second, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows took the extraordinary step of showing up at a signature audit site in Georgia, where he met with Secretary Raffensperger's chief investigator, Francis Watson, who was supervising that audit process. Behind me is a photograph from that visit. Third, the day after Meadows' Georgia visit, he set up a call between President Trump and Francis Watson. On the call between President Trump and Georgia investigator Francis Watson, the former president continued to push the false claim that he'd won the state of Georgia. Let's listen to that part of the conversation.
You know, you have the most important job in the country right now, because if we win Georgia, first of all, if we win, you're going to have 2 wins. So they're not going to win right now. You know, they're down because the people of Georgia are so angry at what happened to me. They know I won by hundreds of thousands of votes. It wasn't close.
And in this next clip, he told this state law enforcement official that she'd be praised if she found the right answer.
Hopefully, you know, I will. When the right answer comes out, you'll be praised. I mean, I don't know why. You know, they made it so hard. They will be praised. People will say, "Great," because that's what it's about. That ability to check and to make it right. Because everyone knows it's wrong. There's just no way.
It's not as powerful as they think.
I know you weren't on this call, but that you have listened to it. President Trump didn't win by hundreds of thousands of votes in Georgia, did he?
No, he did not. I've been traveling through the state of Georgia for a year now, and simply put, in a nutshell, what happened in the fall of 2020 is that 28,000 Georgians skipped the presidential race, and yet they voted down ballot in other races. And the Republican congressman ended up getting 33,000 more votes than President Trump, and that's why President Trump came up short.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The president on this call doesn't stop here. Let's listen to another part of the conversation between President Trump and Ms. Watson.
Anyway, but whatever you can do, Francis, it would be, it's a great thing. It's an important thing for the country. So important. You have no idea it's so important. Well, and I very much appreciate it.
Whatever you can do, Francis. This is the President of the United States calling an investigator looking into the election in which he is a candidate and asking her to do whatever you can do.
I mean, I don't know why Schiff does this stuff. I mean, this is the same thing with the phone call impeachment. I mean, it really is just unreal. I mean, anybody listening to the call, you can tell he believes fraud's there. He's asking her to uncover the fraud, not fooling anybody, Schiff.
Mr. Secretary, he placed this call to your chief investigator on September 23rd, 2020. The Select Committee has received text messages indicating that Mark Meadows wanted to send some of the investigators in her office, in the words of one White House aide, a shitload of POTUS stuff, including coins, actual autographed MAGA hats, etc. White House staff intervened to make sure that didn't happen. It was clear at the time of this call that the former president had his sights set on January 6th. Listen to this portion when he told Francis Watson about a very important date.
Do you think they'll be working after Christmas and keep it going fast? Because, you know, we have that date of the 6th, which is a very important date.
That important date, of course, was the joint session of Congress, where Georgia's electoral votes would be counted for Joe Biden. A little over a week after this call to Francis Watson, the president was finally able to speak with you, Secretary Raffensperger. Bear in mind, as we discuss this call today, that by this point in time, early January, the election in Georgia had already been certified. But perhaps more important, the President of the United States had already been told repeatedly by his own top Justice Department officials that the claims he was about to make to you about massive fraud in Georgia were completely false. Mr. Secretary, the call between you and the President lasted 67 minutes, over an hour. We obviously can't listen to the entire recording here today, although it is available on the Select Committee's website. But we'll listen to selected excerpts of it now so that we can get your insights. Let's begin with the President raising the thoroughly debunked allegations of suitcases of ballots.
In an official voter box, they were in what looked to be suitcases or trunks, suitcases, but they weren't in voter boxes. The minimum number it could be, because we watched it and they watched it certified in slow motion, instant replay, if you can believe it, but it had slow motion and it was magnified many times over. And the minimum it was 18,000 ballots, all for Biden.
These are the allegations that the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and your office had all said were false. Is that right?
Correct. And even more importantly, when B.J. Pack resigned as U.S. Attorney of the Northern District, President Trump appointed as acting U.S. Attorney of the Northern District Bobby Christine. And Bobby Christine looked at that, and he was quoted in the AJC that he found nothing. And he dismissed that case early also.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The President references suitcases or trunks. Mr. Sterling, were the objects seen in these videos suitcases or trunks, or were they just the ordinary containers that are used by election workers?
They're standard ballot carriers that allow for seals to be put on them so they're tamper-proof.
And finally, the President claims that there was a minimum of 18,000 ballots somehow smuggled in, all for Biden. I take it, gentlemen, that that was also categorically false?
There's no physical way he can know who those ballots were for, but secondarily, Fulton County for years has been an issue in our state when it comes to elections. So they had a very difficult time during the primary, in large part because of COVID. So we had put them under a consent decree the Secretary got negotiated, where we had a monitor on site. And his name is Carter Jones, and he took a notation. He had gone from State Farm to the English Street warehouse to look at election day activities, but before he left the State Farm Arena, he noted how many ballots had been counted on each one of the machines. And when he came back, after we found out they were working again, he took note again when they closed. And I believe the final number was something around 8,900 total ballots were scanned from the time he left to the time about 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning. So way below 18,000.
Let's play the next clip.
I heard it was close. I said, there's no way. But they dropped a lot of votes in there late at night. You know that, Brad.
Mr. Secretary, did somebody drop a lot of votes there late at night?
No. I believe that the president was referring to some of the counties when they would upload, but the ballots had all been accepted and had to be accepted by state law by 7 p.m. So there were no additional ballots accepted after 7 p.m.
Let's play the next clip in which the president makes claims about so-called dead voters.
The other thing, dead people. So dead people voted, and I think the number is in the close to 5,000 people. And they went to obituaries, they went to all sorts of methods to come up with an accurate number, and a minimum is close to about 5,000 voters.
Mr. Secretary, did your office investigate whether those allegations were accurate? Did 5,000 dead people in Georgia vote?
No, it's not accurate. And actually, in their lawsuits, they allege 10,315 dead people. We found 2 dead people when I wrote my letter to Congress that stated January 6th. And subsequent to that, we found 2 more. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 people, not 4,000, but just a total of 4, not 10,000, not 5,000.
Let's play the next clip.
How hard did you look?
There's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated, because the 2,236 and absentee ballots, I mean, they're all exact numbers that were done by accounting firms, law firms, etc. And even if you cut them in half, and cut them in half again, it's more votes than we need.
Mr. Secretary, is there any way that you could have lawfully changed the result in the state of Georgia and somehow explained it away as a recalculation?
No, the numbers are the numbers.
Leading.
The numbers don't lie. We had many allegations, and we investigated every single one of them. In fact, I challenged my team, did we miss anything? They said that there was over 66,000 underage voters. We found that there was actually 0. You can register to vote in Georgia when you're 17 and a half. You have to be 18 by election day. We checked that out, every single voter. They said that there was 2,423 non-registered voters. There were 0. They said that there was 2,056 felons. We identified less than 74 or less that were actually still in felony sentence. Every single allegation we checked. We ran down the rabbit trail to make sure that our numbers were accurate.
So there's no way you could have recalculated it except by fudging the numbers?
The numbers were the numbers, and we could not recalculate because we had made sure that we had checked every single allegation. And we had many investigations. We had nearly 300 from the 2020 election.
Mr. Secretary, you tried to push back when the president made these unsupported claims, whether they were about suitcases of ballots or that Biden votes were counted 3 times. Let's play the next clip.
President, they did not put that. We did an audit of that, and we proved conclusively that they were not scanned 3 times. Yeah, Mr. President, we'll send you the link from WSB that does.
I don't care about the link. I don't need it. I have a much better link.
You told the president you would send him a link from WSB, which I understand is a local television station that had a unedited video from the State Farm Arena. But the president wasn't interested in that. He said he had a much better link. Mr. Secretary, at the time that you were on the call with the president, as we have shown, both the FBI and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation have proven these claims to be nonsense. And you told him about these investigations on the phone. Let's listen to what President Trump had to say about the state and federal law enforcement officers who investigated these false claims.
There's no way they could find. Then they're incompetent. They're either dishonest or incompetent. Okay, there's only 2 answers: dishonesty or incompetence. There's just no way. Look, there's no way.
But the president didn't stop at insinuating that law enforcement officers were either dishonest or incompetent. He went on to suggest that you could be subject to criminal liability for your role in the matter. Before I play that portion of the conversation, I'd like to show you something that the president retweeted a couple weeks before your call with him. Here's the president retweet.
So a couple of things real quickly. I've let him go for a long time now. We don't know if the investigators were dishonest or incompetent. Raffensperger said he looked into all these things. And again, folks, we don't know other than his word that they did. And I looked at the numbers while they were going there. Arizona's 11, Georgia's 16, Wisconsin's 10. So if you're sitting there, that's 37. That would only make it a tie in the Electoral College because Biden won 306 to 232, right? So if you're in Georgia and you're Raffensperger, why in the world would you ruffle people in Fulton County, for which you got to run for re-election in a couple years, over a state that at this point it isn't going to make a difference, right? And that was the attitude at the time. But what Trump is saying here is true. I mean, maybe they were incompetent. And again, they say Pack resigned. Pack didn't resign. He was fired.
Post from one of his allies, a lawyer who was later sanctioned by a judge in Michigan for making false claims of election fraud. Let's take a look at that tweet.
Oh, God, they're bringing out Linwood.
Quote, President Trump, @RealDonaldTrump, is a genuinely good man. He does not really like to fire people. I bet he dislikes putting people in jail, especially quote-unquote Republicans. He gave @Brian Kemp, Georgia, and @Georgia Secretary of State every chance to get it right. They refused. They will soon be going to jail. So on your call, this was not the first time the president was suggesting you might be criminally liable. With that, let's listen to this portion of the call.
I think you're going to find that they are shredding ballots because they have to get rid of the ballots because the ballots are unsigned. The ballots are corrupt. And they're brand new and they don't have seals. And there's a whole thing with the ballots, but the ballots are corrupt. And you're going to find that they are, which is totally illegal. It's more illegal for you than it is for them, because you know what they did and you're not reporting it. That's a criminal offense. And you can't let that happen. That's a big risk to you and to Ryan, your lawyer. That's a big risk.
Secretary Raffensperger, after making a false claim about shredding of ballots, the president suggested that you may be committing a crime by not going along with his claims of election fraud. And after suggesting that you might have criminal exposure, President Trump makes his most explicit ask of the call. Let's play a part of that conversation.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Mr. Secretary, was the president here asking you for exactly what he wanted? One more vote than his opponent.
What I knew is that we didn't have any votes to find. We had continued to look. We investigated, like I just shared the numbers with you. There were no votes to find. That was an accurate count that had been certified. And as our general counsel said, there was no shredding of ballots.
Mr. Secretary,
actually,
after making this request,
they did not. He did not get what he wanted there. I mean, first off, the clip should not have left in, if I'm saying for Schiff, he shouldn't have left in that bit because we won by a lot. He should have cut that off, right? Because Trump is maintaining there's all this fraud. Again, if you take the whole call, he's saying fraud, fraud, fraud. There's hundreds of thousands. All I need is these. And then Raffensperger, I got to give him credit there. Real shrewd. He's running for re-election. I don't think he's going to win because of all this, but he's running for re-election. That was a very shrewd answer on his part. Very shrewd. Schiff wanted him to throw it under the bus, and he didn't do it.
Deny these allegations of fraud. Let's listen to that part of the clip.
And I watched you this morning, and you said, well, there was no criminality, but I mean, all of this stuff is very dangerous stuff. When you talk about no criminality, I think it's very dangerous for you to say that.
Secretary Raffensperger, you wrote about this in your book, and you said, quote, I felt
How about
then
impeachment?
and still believe today that this was a threat. Others obviously thought so too.
Objection,
because some
hearsay.
of Trump's more radical followers have responded as if it was their duty to carry out this threat. Please tell us what you, your wife, even your daughter-in-law experienced regarding threats from Trump's more radical followers.
Well, after the election, my email, my cell phone was doxxed, and so I was getting texts all over the country, and then eventually my wife started getting the text, and hers typically came in as sexualized texts, which were disgusting. You have to understand that Trish and I, we met in high school, and we've been married over 40 years now, and so they started going after her, I think, just to probably put pressure on me. Why don't you just quit, walk away? And so that happened, and then some people broke into my daughter-in-law's home, and my son has passed, and she's a widow and has 2 kids. And so we're very concerned about her safety also.
And Mr. Secretary, why didn't you just quit and walk away?
Oh, here we go again.
Because I knew that
Over
we
the
had followed the
skis.
law and we had followed the Constitution. And I think sometimes moments require you to stand up and just take the shots when you're doing your job. And that's all we did. You know, we just followed the law and we followed the Constitution. And at the end of the day, President Trump came up short. But I had to be faithful to the Constitution. And that's what I swore an oath to do.
Much more believable than
During
the
remainder of
Arizona
call,
guy, by the way.
The former president continued to press you to find the remaining votes that would ensure his victory in Georgia. Let's listen to a little more.
Why wouldn't you want to find the right answer, Brad, instead of keep saying that the numbers are right? So look, can you get
Not helpful
together
for them.
And Brad, we just want the truth. It's simple. And
Not helpful, guys.
and everyone's going to look very good if the truth comes out. It's okay. It takes a little while, but let the truth come out. And the real truth is I won by 400,000 votes, at least. So what are we going to do here, folks? I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
4 days after the president's call to Secretary Raffensperger was January 6th. The president whipped up the crowd in front of the ellipse, once again promoting the allegation that Secretary Raffensperger, the president's own attorney general, had told him was false. Here he is on
So
the
much
ellipse.
for 2 hours, folks. We're over 2 hours now.
In Fulton County, Republican poll watchers were ejected, in some cases physically, from the room under the false pretense of a pipe burst, water main burst, everybody leave, which we now know was a total lie. Then election officials pulled boxes, Democrats, and suitcases of ballots out from under a table. You all saw it on television, totally fraudulent, and illegally scanned them for nearly 2 hours, totally unsupervised. Tens of thousands of votes. This act coincided with a mysterious vote dump of up to 100,000 votes for Joe Biden.
Look at the thing in Georgia officials report no irregularities or fraud. PBS is checking him in real time there. That's fascinating. So a couple of things he said there. Again, Trump, this is, he's a politician. He's saying these things that apparently they claim have been debunked. He didn't believe they have. But a couple of things he did say there that are true. There were no poll watchers. They still haven't counteracted that. The other problem is, and again, I'm just going to be honest with you, in Fulton County, the people that counted the ballots, I'm pretty sure Biden won 1,000% of those. I don't think Trump even smelled a vote of those people. Not saying they did anything wrong, but that's the truth.
Fair. That was at 1:34 a.m.
Mr. Secretary, Mr. Sterling, I want to thank you for your service to the
Oh,
state of
thankfully
Georgia
we're done with these people.
and to the
Thank
country.
God.
Speaker Bowers, likewise, I want to thank you for your service to the state of Arizona and to the country. You have served not only your home states, but our nation and our democracy. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
All right. Who's gonna
Thank you,
interview
Mr.
Shay
Schiff.
Moss?
I thank the witnesses for joining us today. You are now dismissed.
Dismissed. Leave. All right, Shay Moss. Shay Moss is one of the election officials. She may have been one of the ones that handled the so-called suitcase, but that now has been established to be a legitimate Fulton County ballot carrier. We'll see what she has to say. She filed, again, she's conflicted because A, she's been accused. B, she also filed a defamation suit. So she's got a lot of animus here, but we'll see what she has to say before the committee. It's going to be interesting. I also think when you've got control like this, you shouldn't go over 2 hours. If you said it was going to be 2 hours, you can now see there on the clock. It's 12. So 3:05 out there. Well, now it's posting 3:05 Eastern time. We're a little behind, obviously. Yeah, here she comes. This is the Fulton County worker. When she finishes, we've got a couple things we're going to go through real quickly. We're going to talk about Georgia. This is the Pence long memo. We're going to talk about, again, 3 U.S.C. Section 5. And we're also going to talk about this article here about whether or not Trump committed a crime. There's a few things in there I just want to make sure you understand in the context of what's going on today. So, anyway, we don't need that anymore. Let's get rid of that. I wonder who's going to interview Shay Moss. It'll probably be Benny Thompson, would be my guess.
I now welcome our final witness this afternoon. Andrea Shay Moss. Ms. Moss worked in the Department of Registration and Elections in Fulton County, Georgia, from 2017 until 2022. In that job, Ms. Moss handled voter applications and absentee ballot requests, and also helped to process the vote count for several elections. In December 2020, Ms. Moss and her mother, Ms. Ruby Freeman, became the target of nasty lies spread by President Trump and his allies as they sought to overturn the election results in Georgia. Ms. Moss and her mother, Ms. Freeman, are two of the unsung heroes in this country, doing the hard work of keeping our democracy functioning for every American. Ms. Moss, welcome. Thank you for your service, and I thank you for being here today. I will now swear you in. Please stand.
This is more trickery. You can, in the morning, you can swear all the witnesses in the morning.
Do you swear or
right,
affirm
so that you don't need to go through this every time. This is just silliness. And again, you'll notice that we didn't see anybody else get sworn in.
Nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record reflect that the witness answered in the affirmative. Ms. Moss, thank you very much for being here today. I understand that you are here along with your mother today. Would you like to introduce your mama?
My goodness. Okay, she's here voluntarily. She's not here by subpoena. So again, she wants to be here.
Hi,
she
Mom.
wants to testify to this committee, which we all know where the committee's
Ms.
going.
Moss, today we'll be asking you about some of the threats that you received following the 2020 election. Since you've been an election worker for over 10 years, I want to ask you, in your decade of service, had you ever experienced threats like these before?
Before she answers, remember you had Sterling there a moment ago say they had a monitor at Fulton County where she works because they'd had some problems, so they had a monitor, right? So these are not clean as a driven snow people as he would have. And again, this whole thing about Trump is responsible for the violence. People were upset because they felt like it was being stolen. Trump agreed with them. Okay, fine, but you can't tie this to Trump just because people did certain things.
Don't be nervous. I understand. So, and I want to make sure that the record reflects that you've done it for quite a while and you never received a threat. And your answer was no.
Yes, the answer to the leading question was no.
Pursuant to
yes,
Section
or whatever.
5C8 of the House Resolution 503, the chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, for questions.
Oh, Schiff's going to do her too. Okay. Well, here we go.
Good afternoon, Ms. Moss. Thank you for being here. I understand that you were employed by the Fulton County Registration and Elections Department for more than 10 years, and I understand that you love that job. Please tell us what made you so fond of the work that you do.
Oh, my God. Give me a break.
Well, I've always been told by my grandmother how important it is to vote and how
here we go. Wow.
people before me, a
you
lot
talk
of
about
people,
slavery too?
older people in my family did not have that.
Oh, yeah.
right.
There we go. Didn't have
So
that.
what I loved most about my job were the older voters. Younger people could usually do everything from their phone or go online, but the older voters like to call, they like to talk to you, they like to get my card, they like to know that every election I'm here. And like even college students, a lot of parents
This is actually reasonably
trusted me
effective.
to make sure their
humanizing
child
her.
does not have to drive home. They'll get an absentee ballot, they can vote, and I really found pleasure in that. I liked being the one that, you know, if someone can't navigate my voter page or, you know, they want a new precinct card and they don't have a copy machine.
This is a good example of a witness getting better as she's testifying and becoming more comfortable.
I was excited always about sending out all the absentee ballots for
Seems like a very genuine answer.
elderly,
She's given
disabled
specific
people.
examples. People love this.
I even remember driving
Very
to
good stuff.
an hospital to give someone her absentee application.
I'm not sure
what
that's
I love the
entirely proper, but
You really
but anyway, it's
enjoyed
powerful stuff
helping
for what it's
people
supposed to be.
Vote and participate, and that was something, the right to vote that your grandmother taught you was precious.
Also effective by Schiff, illegal because
I know
it's
the
leading
events that we're here
again,
to talk
but
about today
effective.
are incredibly difficult to relive. Your proud service as an election worker took a dramatic turn on the day that Rudy Giuliani publicized a video of you and your mother counting ballots on election night. President Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and others claimed on the basis of this video that you and your mother were somehow involved in a plot to kick out observers, bring suitcases of false ballots for Biden into the arena, and then run them through the machines multiple times. None of that was true, was it?
Objection leading.
I'd like to show you some of the statements that Rudy Giuliani made in a second hearing before the Georgia state legislators, a week after that video clip from State Farm
We've already
Arena was
seen
first
this,
circulated by Mr. Giuliani and President Trump. I want to advise viewers that these statements are completely false and also deeply disturbing.
Tape earlier in the day of Ruby Freeman and
I mean, folks, this is just fascinating. I mean, Schiff is the prosecutor, he's the judge, he's the jury, he's everything. I'm going to tell you this is all false before he plays it. I mean, this is just fascinating. Gosh. I can't believe this is happening in America.
Quite obviously, surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine. I mean, it's obvious to anyone who's a criminal investigator or prosecutor they are engaged in surreptitious illegal activity again that day. And that's a week ago, and they're still walking around Georgia lying. They should have been questioned already. Their places of work, their homes should have been searched for evidence of ballots, for evidence of USB ports, for evidence of voter fraud.
That video was from Rudy Giuliani's appearance at a Georgia State Senate hearing on December 10. How did you first become aware that Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer, was accusing you and your mother of a crime?
So a couple things before she answers here real quickly. You know, one of the things that the Trump team did do wrong is that a lot of the people they had out front, like Giuliani and Lynn Wood and the Kraken, right? These people, they followed a lot of the more bombastic stories out there. And so what we've seen here, they really should be limited to the suitcases and there was an allegation at some point, and I think she was involved in it, obviously, that people were taking, thumb drives and then taking votes and moving them around. This all happened because the poll watchers had left, right? And this all happened because it was such a tight election, right? And but I have to say this, they're doing a fairly effective job here of making the Trump team look bad. It's regrettable, and again, it's in a show trial situation, but I have to say it's effective.
I was at work, like always, and the former chief, Mr. Jones, asked me to come to his office. And when I went to his office, the former director, Mr. Barron, was in there, and they showed me a video on their computer. It was just like a very short clip of us working at State Farm, and it had someone on the video like talking over the video, just saying that we were doing things that we weren't supposed to do, just lying throughout the video. And that's when I first found out about it.
And were there social media posts that they showed you responding to those false claims?
Well, when I saw the video, of course, the first thing that I said was like, why? Why are they doing this? What's going on? And they, just told me that Trump and his allies were not satisfied with the outcome of the election, and they were getting a lot of threats and being harassed online, and asked me, have I been receiving anything, and I need to check on my mom. And I told them, I was like, where have they, where have you been getting these threats? I don't believe I have any. And Mr. Jones told me, like, they're attacking his Facebook, and I don't really use Facebook. I have one, so I went to the Facebook app, and I'm just kind of panicky at this point because this has never happened to me, and my mom is involved, and I'm like her only child. So
again,
I was just
pretty effective
asking,
witness
where
here,
are the
getting
messages?
better
All I see
and
is
better.
the feeds. Like, how do you get to the messages? And he said it's another icon on your phone that says Messenger. And I went to that icon, and it was just a lot of horrible things there.
And those horrible things, did they include threats?
Yes, a lot of threats, wishing death upon me, telling me that, I'll be in jail with my mother, and saying things like, be glad it's 2020 and not 1920.
Which reminds me, I was just going to jump in and say this. I would note that if you had opposition at this hearing, somebody would eventually go, to this, Ms. Moss, I would note you've not experienced any violence. In fact, you don't know of any violence that resulted as a result of these election allegations in 2020, do you? Right? Because on cross, you can ask leading questions. The answer is yes or no. And so, again, the committee's making a big deal about this, but again, a little out over their skis because no one got hurt. Right? So it's a lot of smoke, no fire.
Were a lot of these threats and vile comments racist in nature?
Oh, come on, Schiff.
A lot of them were racist. A lot of them were just hateful.
Okay, show us the Messenger app on Facebook. Show us.
In one of the videos we just watched, Mr. Giuliani accused you and your mother of passing some sort of USB drive to each other. What was your mom actually handing you on that video?
A ginger mint.
What?
It wasn't just Rudy Giuliani. We heard President Trump make these false allegations repeatedly during his call with Secretary Raffensperger. Let's listen
look, that's just false, folks. There's no way it was a ginger mint. I've seen the video of the thumb drives, and what I recall the explanation is that they were backup drives, and that, again, they should have asked Sterling and Raffensperger about this, but my recollection is that it ended up being debunked. but it certainly didn't look like a gingerman. It looked exactly like a thumb drive because it was a thumb drive, but it had a legitimate purpose is the point.
A portion of what he had to say about you and your mother.
We had at least 18,000, that's on tape. We had them counted very painstakingly. 18,000 voters having to do
This has
with
been
the
debunked
Ruby
by
Freeman.
earlier people. I'm not really
She's
sure
a
why
vote
we're hearing
scammer,
it again.
a professional vote scammer and hustler.
Donald Trump attacked you and your mother using her name 18 times on that call. 18 times. Ms. Moss, can you describe what you experienced listening to former President Trump attack you and your mother in a call with the Georgia Secretary of State?
I felt horrible. I felt like it was all my fault. Like, if I would have never decided to be an elections worker, like, I could have done anything else, but that's what I decided to do. And now people are lying and spreading rumors and lies and attacking my mom. I'm her only child. Going to my grandmother's house. I'm her only grandchild. And my kid. It's just,
It's disgusting, but it's effective. I hate it, but
so
it
bad.
is.
I just felt bad for my mom, and I felt horrible for picking this job and being the one that always wants to help and always there.
Getting a little
Never missing
long in the
out
tooth
one
here.
election. I just felt like it
need
was,
to cut it
was
off.
my fault for putting my family in this situation.
Well, it wasn't your fault. Your mother was kind enough to come speak with us earlier. Let's listen to her story and her words.
Oh, here we go. Now we're going to play more propagandized. You know, she's there. Why can't she testify?
I've always believed that when God says that He'll.
So, folks, again, this is highly unusual and highly improper. You cannot play this type of testimony unless the witness is unavailable. Right? In order to play testimony like this, you have to demonstrate that the witness is unavailable. The witness is not only not unavailable, the witness is there. This is rank Russian communist propaganda. This is disturbing.
Named Great, but this is not the way it was supposed to be. I could have never imagined the events that followed the presidential election 2020. For my entire professional life, I was Lady Ruby.
So not only is it rank hearsay, which is inappropriate, she's actually reading a flipping statement. She's not even testifying from her own memory, which is also improper. I mean, if I started taking a list of the improper things this committee's doing, I don't think I'd fill an entire pad before I was done.
In Georgia, where I was born and lived my whole life.
It's unbelievable.
Knew me as Lady Ruby. I built my own business around that name, LaRuby's Unique Treasures. A pop-up shop catering to ladies with
What does this have to do with the election?
I wore a
Objection,
shirt
irrelevant.
Proclaimed that I was, and I am, Lady Ruby. Actually, I had that shirt on. I had that shirt in every color. I wore that shirt on Election Day 2020. I haven't worn it since, and I'll never wear it again.
Oh, okay, now we're getting to the point, the
Now
threats.
I won't even introduce myself by my name anymore. I get nervous when I bump into someone I know in the grocery store who says my name. I'm worried about who's listening. I get nervous when I have to give my name for food orders. I'm always concerned of who's around me. I've lost my name and I've lost my reputation.
You did file a lawsuit, didn't you?
I've lost my sense of security.
Oh, if she cries, that'll be like the cherry on top.
Starting with number 45 and his ally, Rudy Giuliani, decided to scapegoat me and my daughter, Shay, to push their own lies about how the presidential election was stolen.
January 6th, that pressure became deadly.
Who wrote that
Ruby
statement
Freeman
for you?
said the president is supposed to protect every American, not target them. And she is right. If the most powerful person in the world can bring the full weight of the presidency down on an ordinary citizen who is merely doing her job with a lie as big and heavy as a mountain.
Not effective when it's
Who
coming
among
from
us
Schiff. You
is
need to
safe?
let the witness do it, Schiff.
None of us is. None of us. In city councils and town councils, on school boards
I
and
guess
election
he's done
boards,
asking
from
questions.
the Congress
but
to the courts,
he's now making a speech.
dedicated public servants are leaving their posts because of death threats to them.
Show us the
and to their
death threat.
families.
Show us. Where's the death threat?
This is not who we are. It must not become who we are.
You're helping to cause it now.
Our
buddy.
democracy held because courageous people like those you heard from today put their oath.
All right. Hopefully they're wrapping it up, and I can give you a
above
bunch
their
of more
loyalty
information I want to make sure
one
you
man
have.
or to one party. The system held, but barely, and the question remains:
But
will
barely.
it hold again?
But barely.
If we are able to communicate anything during these hearings, I hope it is this: we have been blessed beyond measure to live in the world's greatest democracy.
He's 33 minutes over, folks.
That
I
is a
need to wrap this
legacy
up.
to be proud of and to cherish, but it is not one to be taken for granted. That we have lived in a democracy for more than 200 years does not mean we shall do so tomorrow. We must reject violence. We must embrace our Constitution.
There's been no proof of violence
with
here,
the
by the way,
reverence it deserves.
other than the January 6th
Take our
riot,
oath of office and duties as citizens seriously, informed by the knowledge of right and wrong, and armed with no more than the power of our ideas and the truth, carry on this venerable experiment in self-governance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
So one of the most disgusting things about this hearing is to hear people like Schiff, who is literally a junkyard dog, talk about this experiment in the Constitution as if he cares about the Constitution. If you cared about the Constitution, you would not be engaging in a show trial in secrecy. This guy, he's too much to handle sometimes.
Without objection, the chair recognized the gentlewoman from Wyoming,
So,
Ms. Cheney, for a closing statement.
Here we go. Liz Cheney closing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Which is
Lady
nonsense.
Ruby and Shay, thank you for your courage. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for being here today.
If anything
it
is
means so much
what
for
we've
everyone
seen, they're
hear
going to
your
thank their
stories,
own
so thank you
witnesses,
for
which is
that.
nonsense, and they're going to give
We've
closings,
had
which is nonsense, and they shouldn't be doing.
Testimony today. We've been reminded that we're a nation of laws. And we've been reminded by you and by Speaker Bowers and Secretary of State Raffensperger, Mr. Sterling, that our institutions don't defend themselves. Individuals do that. And we've reminded that it takes public servants. It takes people who've made a commitment to our system to defend our system. We also have been reminded what it means to take an oath under God to the Constitution, what it means to defend the Constitution. And we were reminded by Speaker Bowers that our Constitution is indeed a divinely inspired document. And so it's been an honor to spend time with you and with our previous witnesses here today. To date, more than 30 witnesses called before this committee have not done what you've done, but have invoked their Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. Roger Stone took the Fifth, General Michael Flynn took the Fifth, John Eastman took the Fifth. Others, like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, simply refused to comply with lawful subpoenas, and they have been indicted. Mark Meadows has hidden behind President Trump's claims of executive privilege and immunity from subpoenas. We're engaged now in litigation with Mr. Meadows. The American people in our hearings have heard from Bill Barr, Jeff Rosen, Richard Donahue, and many others who stood up and did what is right. And they will hear more of that testimony soon. But the American people have not yet heard from Mr. Trump's former White House counsel, Pat Cipollone. Our committee is certain that Donald Trump does not want Mr. Cipollone to testify here. Indeed, our evidence shows that Mr. Cipollone and his office tried to do what was right. They tried to stop a number of President Trump's plans for January 6th. Today, and in our coming hearings, you will hear testimony from other Trump White House staff explaining what Mr. Cipollone said and did, including on January 6th. But we think the American people deserve to hear from Mr. Cipollone personally. He should appear before this committee, and we are working to secure his testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Okay, so a little bit of preview of what we're going to get Thursday.
People answer the call to public service in such different ways. Some run for office. Some volunteer to make sure their neighbors can get to their voting locations. Some work at polling sites to help election day go smoothly.
You'll want to stick around.
Some
I'm
look
going to
into
spend about 10
problems to
minutes
guarantee our
debunking some of this
elections
stuff.
are secure and accurate, just to name a few. As I mentioned at the start of this hearing, when we talk about our democratic institutions, we're talking about these individuals and many others who do these jobs across the country. They represent the backbone of our democracy at its most important moments, when the citizens cast their votes and when those votes are counted. We've heard the stories of their courage. They've earned the thanks of a grateful nation. But for Donald Trump, these witnesses and others like them were another roadblock to his attempt to cling to power. On Thursday, we'll hear about another part of that scheme, his attempt to corrupt the country's top law enforcement body, the Justice Department, to support his attempt to overturn the election.
That's going to be the plan to
Just as we heard
grab the
today,
machines.
That Donald Trump was deeply involved in the scheme to pressure state officials to overturn the election results. We will hear on Thursday that Donald Trump was also the driving force behind the effort to corrupt the Justice Department. Listen to this clip from the former acting Attorney General, Richard Donahue.
The president says, suppose I do this. Suppose I replace him, Jeff Rosen, with him, Jeff Clark. What do you do? And I said, sir, I would resign immediately. There is no way I'm serving 1 minute under this guy, Jeff Clark.
You'll hear from Mr. Donahue in person on Thursday as my colleague, Mr. Kinzinger, presents details about this plan. The chair requests those in the hearing room remain seated until the Capitol Police have escorted members from the room.
So again, you're a second-class citizen. Now you got to wait till we leave, so our private security can take care of us. All right, so I'm done. I'm done. Just like my cousin Vinny, I'm done with that guy. All right, so folks, if you go over to GreatAmericanMail.substack.com, this is an article that we published. You can see here, April 30th of 2022. No, Trump didn't commit a crime. If you go to our YouTube channel, and that's not it, this is the YouTube channel. There's a video up here. We've actually done that twice. So if you go to Sunday, no, it's not a coup to challenge Biden's election, or if you scroll down, it's here. No, Trump didn't commit a crime. That was published. Well, you can see it there. Anyway, so if you pull this article up, there's a lot of things that sort of demonstrate or explain to you exactly what's going on. So they're trying to do about 7 things with this committee. The last hearing, the third one, and the fourth today are completely designed to prove that Trump committed a crime by challenging Biden's certification. So on the third hearing, they went after the idea of going to January 6th and just anything he was doing to try and challenge it in and of itself is a coup. Today, they were talking about how he got various people there to object. Now, we heard earlier today during the break, we heard Peter Navarro lay out the Green Bay sweep. The Green Bay sweep, according to Navarro, and again, we're not hearing anything else from this committee. According to Navarro, the plan was to get the election to the House. We've told you many times before, there's 50 states, and if you look at it, Democrats have a majority of the states, of the actual persons in the House, all of the Congress people. But if you look at delegations, they do not, right? So if you look at delegations, Trump would have 1 in all likelihood in the House. Now, they are trying to claim in this committee, and they have tried to claim many times, that Trump committed a crime. Anything he was doing to challenge certification is crime. And this article lays this out. Where did they come up with this? Well, they come up with this idea because they got a judge to rule, okay? And this is, look here in I think it's the 4th paragraph here. On March 28th, 2022, Judge David O'Carter of the United States District Court, he was a Clinton appointee, he ruled. If you look at that, this is the ruling where he comes in, and this is the determination that, according to David O'Carter, that Trump, and I'm going to highlight it here for you, okay? Trump, more likely than not, committed crimes under the January 6th committee's first 2 theories. The court declined to rule in the third. What were the first 2 theories? Well, they are in the prior paragraph, all right? Trump obstructed Congress by proceeding to count the electoral votes on January 6th in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1512, that Trump, Eastman, and others entered into an agreement to defraud the United States by interfering with the election certification process in violation of 18 U.S. Section 371. The third one is that they committed general election fraud. He said he didn't go with that one. Now, of course, as you know, in order for it to be a crime, the standard is not more likely than not. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. So you've got a problem there. If you want to read the article and go through this, I encourage you to do so. You can do that on your own time. But basically, we go through in the article and we talk about how the more likely than not finding is baseless, because what he's basically saying is that challenging certification or taking any step to challenge certification itself is a crime. He just basically declares it so. And that's what, when you don't have the rule of law and you have a show trial. But I don't mean to focus on that. And what I really mean to focus on in this particular here is down towards the bottom. I want you to understand that Trump planning to challenge the certification had been done before. Okay, here it is, boom. This is CNN. In 2005, so this would have been Dick Cheney presiding over the 2004 election. As you'll know, W won that because he won Ohio. Okay, and again, this is CNN. At the Great American Mail, we go to left-wing sources. We're not going to Newsmax. We're not going to Fox. We're not going to anybody else. We're going to the left wing, CNN, alleging widespread irregularities on Election Day. A group of Democrats in Congress objected Thursday to the counting of Ohio's 20 electoral votes, delaying the official certification of the 2004 presidential election results. Okay, now, the people who did it, right, they say they weren't designed to overturn the election. All they did is cause a day delay, but this is what they claim. Who knows what they were doing, but it was Stephanie Tubbs Jones and California Senator Barbara Boxer. Now, again, going back to the article and how that works, you'll see it's been done before in 2004. Now, did you hear the Democrats claim that that was a coup or an insurrection? Did you hear David Carter, the judge then, say, oh, you've interfered with something by doing that? No. Because that's the law. They followed the Electoral Count Act of 1877 or 1887, which you see referenced here. Okay. Now, the other important thing you have to understand is not only again today the committee focused on I believe they focused on Arizona, and Arizona apparently the way they did the alternate slate of electors to go there, it looks problematic. I don't know why somebody hasn't been indicted, but I would note that they haven't been indicted, okay? But it wasn't just Wisconsin, right? It wasn't just Arizona, right? We pulled up Rachel Maddow where she was talking earlier in the day about Wisconsin. Georgia did it. All the 6 states did it. And in addition, here you go right here. This is from the New York Times, 147 who voted to overturn election results. This is a story about the 8 senators, you'll see them on the left there, and the 139 representatives, you'll see them on the right there. I'm moving the cursor upside and down, right? This is the New York Times. They published this on January 7, 2021. This is important, right? Because these people were ready to object to the certification of certain states. This was all part of the Green Bay sweep that we heard from earlier today of Navarro, right? And again, if you go to the article, you can find this yourself. You just go down there to the bottom and click on it. Bammo, there it is, okay? So the idea, right, is that how in the world was Trump able to get all these people? And this is what the January 6th committee is doing. I want you to just focus on Arizona, and how these people came to get alternate electors for Biden. And they're asking you to completely, not look at the other people. We've got 139 people in Congress. We've got 8 people in the Senate that are ready to object to this. The fact of the matter is, a lot of people were really upset about what had happened in that election, and they wanted it looked at. Okay, the other thing is, if you look at some of these other articles and you go through them, you'll find that this was known well before January 6th. This wasn't just something that came up at the end. Now, also pulled up, I wanted you to know, again, I already pulled up earlier in the program, determination of controversy as to the appointment of electors. The Electoral Count Act of 1887 already accounts for this. This is already accounted for. I don't know why they're not bringing it up, but they're not. So if they want to question what they did, they can, but they can't make it seem as though it was anything nefarious, where in fact there's laws covering this stuff. And again, think about this. You heard Benny Thompson, again, out of head of his skis again. There was a handful of people. It wasn't a handful of people. 139 congresspersons, not a handful. 8 senators, not a handful. 6 different states coming up with alternate electors is not a handful. It takes a lot of people to do this, okay? Anyway, so let's look at the election of 2020. And one of the things I pointed out earlier, but I want to make sure everybody understands. This is a very good interactive map. Again, it's a left-wing source. It's Wikipedia, okay? You can pull this up yourself. All right, now, 306 to 232, all right? Now, Georgia. You have to understand, we talked about the state of Georgia today, all right? Why is it doing that? Don't do that. Go back. All right, Georgia has 16 votes. One of the things that they didn't talk about today, but Trump needed, I think he wanted various states to try and decertify. He's doing everything he could because he believed he'd been cheated. And I think they did a very poor job today, and they've done a very poor job in the hearing of demonstrating that Trump knew. And in fact, today they even just a lot of fumbles on the carpet. The ball was on the carpet a lot today because a lot of times you had Trump going, hey, get this person what they need. Give them the evidence they need. He seemed to think that they had the evidence that they needed. He seems to be pretty well versed in the evidence, and he's able to spout it out. They're expecting us to believe that he doesn't believe what he's saying. But getting back to the point I wanted to make about Raffensperger and Sterling today, they represented 16 votes. Now, what Trump was asking them to do was very bad for them politically for a lot of reasons. One, you do not want to tick off Fulton County. It's going to upset a lot of groups that they need to get reelected. Okay, well, and Sterling doesn't need to get reelected, but Raffensperger does. The other problem is, we talked about it, 302 to 232. Trump has 2 ways to win here. He gets an additional 37 votes, right, which ties it, which sends it to the House, which he would win. Or he gets 40. And if he gets 40, right? But here's the problem. If you take Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin, so 16, right? Wisconsin has Arizona here with 11, right? And Wisconsin up here with 10, okay? Those right there. So 10, 11, and 16. That's enough to get it to 269. But if you're Raffensperger or you're Kemp or these Georgia election officials, you're asking me to go out of my way to try and flip something to go find voter fraud when you would still need 2 more states, and big ones at that, right? So Georgia, by the way, is not going to be alone going to be able to do it. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that, him going to these people, it might have been different if they were the last state standing. If it was, say, Florida in 2000, it might have been different. All right, last thing I wanted to show you here. This is the the Pence memos that came out in the 3rd hearing. This is the long memo, okay? This is to the Vice President Pence from the Office of the Vice President Legal. That is probably Greg Jacob, although he doesn't, for whatever reason, doesn't sign it. Unlawful election conduct in 6 states. This is dated January 1st, 2021, 5 days before January 6th. In 6 swing states, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Wisconsin, the GOP and related plaintiffs have alleged both procedural violations of election laws by state or local election officials and substantive issues or instances of election fraud. This memorandum provides state-by-state charts that summarize these allegations. In general, there is strong evidence, okay, I'm literally reading from the memo right there, okay, that state and local officials committed numerous procedural violations that reduced transparency and or favored Democrat candidates, okay? We talked about State Farm Arena. They try to just brush over this, and they can't. The fact of the matter remains, and you didn't hear any evidence today to rebut it, the fact remains that the poll watchers, both Democrats and Republicans, left. Now, they're saying they're looking at the video, folks. If you've seen that video, and I wish I could pull it up, but I don't have it readily available, but if you look at that video, it's not like they're watching every single solitary person all the time. There's just no way, okay? All right, so they basically admit, and then again, to be fair, because we believe in being fair on the Great American Mail, however, most allegations of substantive voter fraud, defined to mean casting of illegal ballots in violation of prevailing election laws, are either relatively small in number or cannot be verified. Okay, so that was the state of mind of the Vice President's office at that time. And I make this to make 2 points. One, the first point is they know about the procedural irregularities, yet Pence is not willing to do anything about it. Okay, and then number 2, they basically admit that some of this stuff can't be verified. Well, that's what the committee is trying to gloss over, right? And they're not doing a thorough job of doing that. They're not showing us the evidence. They're not bringing in the people that investigated it. They're just bringing in some top people to repeat things and give opinions that they can't base. But anyway, so I've scrolled down here. This memo basically goes through various states and gives you the sites for it. So I want to read a couple of these things, okay? And again, this is from Vice President Pence's memo from his own legal counsel. On election night at State Farm Arena, election observers, the media, and most election workers left after being told that counting was completed for the night. Video footage, however, shows some election workers actually stayed on the premises for several hours and to continue count ballots largely unobserved. All right, that had not been debunked. You see it in this memo. They didn't debunk it today. Now they kind of washed over it and said, well, I mean, they were told mistakenly and we wanted to get the count done, so we told them to go keep counting. They never ever had any opposition, and that's why they don't want opposition there to ask what's going on, okay? Initial reports that the counted ballots were taken from suitcases has been refuted by state officials. So I just want you to understand that even from people like Pence, they knew about this, but again, didn't care. Some GOP poll watchers also testified to being intimidated by people working with Democrat-affiliated groups. Now, we knew this went on. We knew in Pennsylvania they started putting up boards. We knew in Michigan they moved so far away that people couldn't see what was going on. All right. Although both Republicans and Democrats alleged election improprieties during early voting, the Secretary of State did not announce an investigation for weeks. And then when he did, he announced that the results of the investigation would not change the results of the election before concluding the investigation. Okay? So again, I told you already about Raffensperger, right? Oh, I did a great job. Oh, of course, I did a great job. I did a wonderful investigation. Yeah, I told you before I completed the investigation that the investigation wasn't going to give you what you wanted, right? All right. So the point is I could go on, but we've been going for a while, and I just want you to understand, okay? This is a lot of stuff here that's in this memo, and I want you to understand that even people who were not ready to challenge the election, example, Mike Pence, example, Greg Jacob, who worked for Mike Pence, these people were basically willing to just say, look, we just can't do anything about it, okay? I'm not asking you to agree or disagree with that approach, but understand this, what is going on here, what January 6th is doing. In addition to killing the rule of law, in addition to engaging in propaganda, they're not even really doing it effectively. But we are seeing now again and again through this hearing, part of what's happening is you got, let's say 45% of the country, whatever it is, that voted for Biden. These people like Schiff and Thompson and Les Cheney, and like, they don't care. Once their person wins, that's it. They're never ever going to want to challenge anything. For them, that's it. My guy got announced by the AP, we're not doing anything. But then you don't have an equal and opposite group that voted for Trump. You don't have those 1 million people, however many that voted for Trump. They then break up into a different group. While Biden's team is unified, we stand unified. We're not doing anything. If you even say this election was any problematic, we're gonna go after you, right? Then you have the Trump people that break down to probably, a half or 2/3. You put whatever number you want to put on it. But they're basically like, hey, this is bad. Let's get to the bottom of this. Let's find out where the fraud is. What's going on here? But then you got a third or maybe 50%. I don't know. You got the Jacobs, the Pences, right? The Raffenspergers, the Sterlings. They're like, hey, guys, yeah, it's too bad. I mean, maybe there were problems, but let's just move on. I don't want to do any. I don't want to do any big work, heavy lifting here. And you have to understand that's what's going on. And that's one of the things this committee is designed to do. It's designed to go after those people and go, hey, you, keep your mouth shut if you ever want to stay and do anything. Hey, you see what we did to the January 6th defendants? You see what we're doing to other people and how we're destroying their careers? We'll do this to you too. And it's just fascinating to look at this memo here, where even his team at this point is going, yeah, there are a lot of election irregularities and a lot of crazy stuff went on. And again, if you pull up, see if I got that map up. I do. I want you to look down at some of these vote totals. Again, we've done this before. We'll do it one more time, and then I'm going to wrap it up. I've been going for a while. But let's scroll down. If you scroll down to the bottom, by the way, these Wikipedia articles on the election are really, really good. They got a lot of data right here at your fingertips. Okay, so look at Georgia. All right, so the vote total in Georgia, if you scroll over here to the, I'm not doing it right. If you scroll over, you will see, I thought I did it, and it moved. Why did it move? Georgia, where is it? Georgia, there we go. Well, we may not be able to do this. I thought we could. No, hey, there it is right there. Where's the Delta in Georgia? Well, all right. I thought I could do it. I can't do it. But anyway, the point is the difference in a couple of these states. I believe it was. I may have it here before me. Let's see if I have it. I don't have it, but I believe that off the top of my head, the difference in Georgia was about 10,000. The difference in Arizona was about 10,000. The difference in Wisconsin was about 10,000. And these were very, very close election. And one of the points that I think Trump did effectively make today is that you're talking about a vote margin that is very, very close. So I did pull it back up here. So it looks like Biden got 49.47. Trump got 49.4. Again, I think it's about 11,779 votes. The point is you're talking about not a lot of votes. And Raffensperger never really checked on any of this stuff really, really carefully. And I think the reason is partially he just wanted it to move on, right? And also partially he didn't want to do anything that would influence his career negatively going forward. But we're not talking about a lot here. And to date, no one's ever really investigated this stuff really, really carefully to see what went on. And the Democrats have done everything they can to try and prevent that to happen. And I'll leave you with this thought. You know, the one thing the Democrats do well, I hate it, but they do propaganda very well. This committee is designed, one, as a cover for any potential election irregularities or any potential nefarious things that could have gone on, right? And that's what they do a lot of. They accuse you of that, what you're doing. So not only was it the freest, fairest election of all time, but if you even say fraud, we're going to come after you, right? And then people, the position you come to with that is that you just have to drop it. So anyway, we shall see. We'll be live streaming it again. If you listen to this, like it, sharing is caring, let people know. But we will live stream the hearing the 5th on Thursday, and it looks like what we're going to do is we're going to hear from Cipollone, and we're going to hear from some of the Dominion stuff, according to Benny Thompson. We shall see where they go. Hopefully to see you on Thursday.